Never. Good morning again. Our first order on the agenda, of course, will be the adoption of our minutes. Good morning, Minister.
I rise to move for the adoption of the minutes of the Senate of our last meeting, October 26, 2020. May I have a second?
Madam President, I rise to second.
It has been moved and seconded that the minutes of Monday, the 26th of October 2020, be adopted. All those in favor? All those opposed, nay? The ayes have it. The minutes are adopted unless there is some additions or deletions that need to be appropriated. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, swearing in of new senators, communications by the President, messages from the Governor General, messages from the House of Assembly, laying of documents by ministers, communications by ministers. Sorry. He said no. Oh, that's why I read it. She didn't come.
Bahamas number 58. Message to the Honorable the President and Honorable Members of the Senate from the Speaker and Representatives of the Honorable House of Assembly. The House of Assembly acquaints the Honorable the Senate that they have agreed to the following resolution and desire the consent of that Honorable Chamber, namely, now therefore be it resolved that this House, A, approves the continuance of the second proclamation made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. B, affirms the continuance in effect of the emergency powers COVID-19 pandemic regulations 2020 made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. C, affirms the continuance in effect of the emergency powers COVID-19 pandemic number 8 order 2020 made on the 9th day of October 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. D, affirms the continuance in effect of the emergency powers COVID-19 pandemic special provisions order 2020 made on the 30th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. And E, affirms the continuance in effect of the emergency powers COVID-19 pandemic extension of Section 7.1 of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020, made on the 31st day of August 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. House of Assembly, Nassau, 26 October 2020, House and Meeting, Speaker.
Okay, the documents be brought up. The documents lie on the table. Laying of documents by ministers, communications by ministers, communications by senators. The chair recognizes Senator Mitchell.
Yes, Madam President, I wanted to make two observations. First is I understand that there's been a change from the reading in the public domain, a change of regime, an addition of a new minister. I wondered if the minister is going to communicate formally to the Senate what the position is with regard to that and how long that is going to obtain. And secondly, I wanted to say that at the last sitting of the Senate, which I attended, I made the observation to the clerk that it appears to me that the tradition of the Speaker leading a procession out of the Senate, out of its adjournment, seems to have died. And I want to urge, as a guardian of that tradition, that that tradition be restored. It is up to you, Madam President, but I want to make that observation, please.
Okay, in reference to your first request, the minister who represents the government in this chamber at this time is Minister Dwight Sawyer. We introduced him yesterday, and what his duties and responsibilities will be for the period of time that he is acting as minister. I am thinking that his position will last for the next 24 to 48 hours. I'm not 100% certain of that, but I know before the end of this present week, the minister whom he replaces, which is Minister Kwesi Thompson, will be back in his previous position.
Thank you, Madam President, for that explanation. The reason I ask is because in our discussions in camera, I've been advised that a minister without portfolio was supposed to have been appointed. But I read in the newspaper that the minister was sworn in as a minister responsible as the Minister of State for Grand Bahama. So I'm just seeking a clarification. Is that in fact the portfolio responsibility?
That is the portfolio that he was sworn in.
So it's not minister without portfolio?
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Questions, answers to questions, presentation of petitions, appointment of select committees, reports of committees. We have no bills on the table, so we will have no first reading, second reading, committee of the whole, or third reading of bills today. Consideration of House amendments, resolutions. The chair recognizes Minister Sawyer.
Whenever. Thank you. Good morning, Madam President and fellow senators. I rise to move the following resolution. Whereas pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that a state of public emergencies for the purposes of this article exists in the Bahamas. And whereas the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic of COVID-19, which seriously threatened the public health of the Bahamas. And whereas on the 17th day of March 2020, a proclamation of emergency was made by the Governor General pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, declaring that a state of public emergency existed in the Bahamas, which expired on the 29th day of June 2020. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in a proclamation of cases around the world and in the Bahamas, which mandated the continuance of a state of public emergency. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General made another proclamation of emergency, herein called the Second Proclamation, dated the 29th day of June 2020, declaring that a state of public emergency exists in the Bahamas. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29(4) of the Constitution, a proclamation ceases to be enforced at the expiration of a period of 14 days, beginning on the date on which it was made, or at the expiration of such longer period as may be approved under Article 29.5 of the Constitution. And whereas Article 29.5 of the Constitution provides for the continuance in force of a proclamation if at any time while the proclamation is in force, a resolution is passed by each House of Parliament approving its continuance in force for a further period not exceeding 6 months, beginning on the date on which it would otherwise expire. The proclamation shall, if not sooner revoked, continue in force for that further period. And whereas pursuant to Article 29.5 of the Constitution, a first resolution under the second proclamation, herein called the first resolution, was passed by each House of Parliament on the 6th day of July 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the second proclamation until the 31st day of July 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29.5 of the Constitution, a second resolution under the second proclamation, herein the second resolution, was passed by each House of Parliament on the 22nd day of July 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the second proclamation until the 30th day of September 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29.5 of the Constitution, a third resolution under the second proclamation, herein called the third resolution, was passed by each House of Parliament on the 16th day of September 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the second proclamation until the 31st day of October 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Section 3.1 of the Emergency Powers Act, Chapter 34, herein called the Act, the Governor General made the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 on the 29th day of June 2020. And whereas Section 3.3 of the Act provides that emergency regulations may empower such authorities or persons as may be specified in the regulation to make orders and rules for any of the purposes for which such regulations are authorized by the Act to be made, and may contain such incidental and supplementary provisions as appear to the Governor General to be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the regulations. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 empower the competent authority to make such orders as are authorized by the Act to be made. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Order 2020 and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020 were made by the competent authority on the 30th day of June 2020. And whereas pursuant to Section 5.2 of the Act, by the first resolution, which House of Assembly affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas pursuant to Section 5.2 of the Act, by the second resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 and the Emergency COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas pursuant to Section 5.2 of the Act, by the third resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance and effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulation 2020 and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic extension of Section 17.1 of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020 was made by the competent authority on the 21st day of August 2020. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8, Order 2020 was by the competent authority on the 9th day of October 2020. And whereas ever regard to the continuing proliferation of confirmed cases in the neighboring jurisdictions and an increase of active cases and deaths in the Bahamas. And whereas it continues to be necessary and expedient for securing the public safety and defense of the Bahamas, the maintenance of public order, the suppression of mutiny, rebellion, and riot, and for maintaining supplies and services essential to the life and well-being of the community, to continue in force the second proclamation, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulation 2020, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020, and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Extension of Section 17.1 of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this House, A, approves the continuance of the second proclamation made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. B, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. Affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020 made on the 9th day of October 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. D, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020 made on the 30th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. And E, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Order COVID-19 Pandemic Extension of Section 17.1 of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020, made on the 31st day of August 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. Madam President, let me first pause to thank the Most Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Hubert Minnis, for the confidence expressed in me by his decision to invite me to join his cabinet, if only for a limited period of time. My appointment as minister was necessitated by the fact that most of the cabinet, inclusive of the 3 cabinet ministers in this Senate, were placed in quarantine. Hence, Rule 29.3 of the Senate rules, the Senate would not have been able to meet because under that rule, the Senate can only be adjourned by a minister. If the Senate cannot be lawfully adjourned, then it cannot lawfully open. Yet, it is critically important that the existing extension resolution, which is due to expire on Saturday coming, the 31st of October 2020, be replaced by a new extension order. Under the Constitution, any extension must be passed by both houses of Parliament. Last evening, the House of Assembly did its part. Today, we are called upon to do our part. The resolution before the Senate will extend the proclamation of emergency made by the Governor General on the 29th of June 2020, and all regulations and orders currently in force pursuant to that proclamation for a further month until the 30th of November 2020. Madam President, these are times that try our souls. Our nation, like many others around the world, is in the grips of almost rampant spread of the novel coronavirus. Across the globe, even countries like New Zealand, with a good history of control of the virus, are now being forced to impose even stricter measures to try and contain the new surge of cases. It is clear from the rising numbers of hospitalizations that the pandemic is imposing tremendous pressure on our hardworking and valiant doctors, nurses, and other healthcare providers. The capacity of our healthcare system, particularly in New Province, is being stretched to the limit. It's almost at the breaking point. On behalf of the government and the people of the Bahamas, I wish to offer my profound gratitude to those frontline warriors who are serving the desperately ill over and above the call of duty. But thank you, and thank you very much, and God continue to bless all of you. Madam President, the situation on the ground is dire. The virus continues to rage. The emergency situation remains. Matters have become precarious because even while the virus rages, we are compelled by economic necessity to take steps to open the economy once again. To do this successfully, we will have to find the right balance between health and safety and a return to economic normality. We must open because our hotel workers are unemployed. Our taxi and jeepney drivers are unemployed. Our store clerks are unemployed. This is simply too much economic pain and suffering to bear. Madam President, as we open the economy, it is even more necessary to maintain emergency powers orders and regulations to enable the right balance to be maintained so that the opening of the economy can be safely managed. We trust that by striking the right balance, we will be at the beginning of the end of all of this economic and emotional pain that has been inflicted on us by this pandemic. Unfortunately, based on all the predictions about the global surge expected this winter, and the apparent long delays which are affecting attempts to develop effective vaccines, we may only be at the end of the beginning rather than the beginning of the end. What is clear, though, is that we must open the economy, and in doing so, we must strike the right balance. Madam President, this has indeed been the strategy of the government. Large parts of the Bahamas have been fully open economically for several months. All the islands listed in the first schedule of the order number 8, from the Abaco Keys, Grand Bahama, all the way to Inagua, they are open economically. However, Madam President, allow me to say a brief word on Grand Bahama. I take this opportunity to commend residents for their collective efforts and self-discipline, which contributed to the decrease in new cases on Grand Bahama since the most recent surge. However, the Ministry of Health reported an increase in new cases for Grand Bahama in recent days. We should all be concerned about this. I must encourage all Bahamans, in particular Grand Bahamans, not to let your guards down. While we may all be battling COVID-19 fatigue, we must keep this fight in the forefront of our minds. Remember that we are still in the midst of a global pandemic and must continue to practice health protocols to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe. But New Providence and Abaco mainland remain subject to the more restrictive lockdown, curfews, and restriction orders. Why is that? Simply because of the obvious. Simply because of the obvious. Both islands are confronted by rampant community spread of the virus. Greater freedom can only be safely granted when there is greater control over the spread of the virus. The only way we will know that the greater control has been achieved will be when the daily new infection rate comes down. This can only be achieved by having the power to control and to limit large public gatherings, whether in enclosed or even in open spaces. This is the only way. And I wish to assure the Bahamian people that all of the restrictions are directly the result of the best medical advice given to the competent authority by the COVID-19 Emergency Committee, comprised of the country's leading professionals. I want to repeat that again. All right? The advice is given to the competent authority by the COVID-19 Emergency Committee, which is comprised of the country's leading medical professions. So we listen to the medical profession in making all of our decisions. I heard a talk about dictatorship by some persons in the other place yesterday. Nothing could be further from the truth. Today, we are engaged in precisely the kind of direct political oversight which is contemplated and mandated by our Constitution. The opposition are free to speak, to make their case, and to advance their own counter-proposals and suggestions. And I want to emphasize, the competent authority is not a one-man ruler. I will repeat that. The competent authority is not a one-man ruler. He is advised by the medical community. He consults with his cabinet. He explains every decision. He consults with the Bahamian people. He consults with his parliamentary colleague. He consults with everybody. So I don't know how you could call him a dictator. All right? No? All right? So, Madam President and fellow Bahamians, right? I want you to observe, please be quiet. I want you to observe and follow the established protocols. Wear your mask, social distance, sanitize when you sneeze like that, and most of all, stay at home. Madam President, I so move if I might obtain a seconder.
The chair recognizes Senator Boston.
Good morning,
Oh.
Madam President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Bahamas. I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak again to this honorable body and to the nation. It is my pleasure to rise to second the motion before this body. It is to me beyond question that the emergency powers must be extended. It is beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Bahamas and that indeed the world remains in a state of emergency as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We started our second wave a little earlier than some of the other nations. But now, sadly, the world, if you watch the news, are in the throes of this disease. And unfortunately for the world, and particularly for the Bahamas, as we rely upon tourism, the forecasts are grim for the fall and winter. While our numbers have spiked, we are seeking to manage those numbers. And it is imperative that the government has the ability to react to how the virus is spreading in the community and in the country. We already have the experience where the virus is spreading at a rate while we have been advised that the hospital beds are full or are almost full. We do not want as a country to be in the position where we see our citizens lined up on streets seeking medical care and unable to receive the same as they lie gasping on the street and in some instances dying. We have seen those images in developed first world nations, and we must do all that we can with our comparatively limited resources and facilities to ensure that it does not happen here. These are not comfortable times. They are difficult times, and there is not one amongst us who is not suffering the results of these types of decisions. But these decisions must be made. And thankfully, we have leadership who is prepared to make the tough decisions in the interests of the Bahamian people, and at the same time to try to do the difficult task of balancing our health, not just immediate health as it relates to the spread, but our continued health. Because for those of you that are following the progression of this disease, we would know that some people have lingering effects, and the true cost on your population is not yet known. So we are the current health, the future health, and to balance the economy itself. We here have the power within our population. It is very important, Bahamas. Constantly, we see in social media, in voices in opposition, lots of protest about what the government is doing. But in truth, the responsibility for this virus rests with each and every one of us. There's one thing that we know from the beginning of this pandemic, and it's been said over and over again. There are basic things which we must do. Social distance, wear your mask, wash your hands, But sadly, we demonstrate consistently that there are some amongst us who are not prepared to abide by those simple procedures. And sadly, we are all made to pay the price. So it is not incumbent upon us, I suggest, as a people, to constantly point our finger at the government, the government, the government, the government, the government. We need to start pointing amongst ourselves at who is not abiding by the practices to control the spread of this disease. It is unacceptable that we should expect our health professionals to put themselves at risk because of our not following basic principles. Within the last 3 weeks or so, the Prime Minister would have come to the public and he would have indicated that more than 200 of our health professionals were either quarantined or suffering with COVID. People, it is not right. To the best of my knowledge, we have one pulmonologist in the Bahamas. A pulmonologist is a lung specialist. There is one. This is not the United States of America. We cannot afford to be relaxed and slack about how we either conduct ourselves or how we govern this country, both government and opposition. There are basic tenets that we must unite and convey to the people. This debate is not about the current orders in place. I note continuously that there is continuous effort to frustrate and confuse what this debate is about. This debate is not about that. This debate is not about whether curfew should start at 7 or 10 p.m. This debate is not about whether we should lock down this weekend. This debate is not about whether we should have curbside service. This debate is about whether or not the government should have the power and the ability to make an emergency order. That's it. Should the government have that power? That's what we're here to debate. Now, we can talk all we want as a people about, well, I would do it this way, or I would do it that way, or why not this way, or why not that way. We could go from A to Z in the alphabet, and every person would come up with a different formula. There is no one way to respond to this virus. So we can go on about, well, maybe I wouldn't do this, or I wouldn't do that, or why this, why that. But the reality of it is that one thing is for certain, COVID is here, and COVID must not be allowed to spread wild in the community. And it's not just about, well, let those who are at risk stay inside. You know, that when I hear that, I get infuriated. Because it's not, first of all, we don't know who's at risk. 34-year-olds are dying. It ain't just old people that are dying. We don't know who is at risk from COVID-19 when you say that. Secondly, it is not just that you're trying to say, well, those at risk go inside, you all stay inside. I've already spoken. There are only so many medical professions in the Bahamas. There are only so many beds. There's only so much the state can take to care for people in this pandemic. You know, you may not normally be at risk if you're young and you're healthy and you're fit or you don't have a comorbidity, but you need to be able to get that care. And without that care, all of a sudden you may be at risk. So this slack, just let it go. It's something that confounds me both here and to watch it nearby with our neighbors. This government has adapted to the science and to the circumstances on the ground. When we first started, and let me say this is so all over the world. This is a new disease. When this first started, persons did not know fully how to react, or governments. So everyone went to full-on lockdown. But we have learned that that is not necessarily necessary. And so now the islands are not locked down. At one point, Grand Bahama was locked down, but New Providence wasn't. Well, now New Providence is not locked down, but we have some restricted movements. Grand Bahama is not. So we have learned to be flexible based upon what is happening in the community. We also, and I assure you, although I don't sit in cabinet, common sense will tell you, we as a government also feel the pressure, the economic pressure caused by this pandemic. We would want everybody to go back to work immediately. The burden on the state and on the coffers of the public treasury is immense. We are having to borrow. The debt of this pandemic will come to bear on generations to come. There is probably no one more than the government that wants to say, for God's sakes, everybody return to normal. But we cannot, as responsible governance, do that. And we must have the power to contract and to release, to contract and to release, much of which is dependent upon the healthcare's facilities' ability to respond to this pandemic. Can we respond? It's getting close. The beds are full. Contract, hold the reins tighter. Bring down the numbers. Okay, we can respond, release. And we have no choice but to take that kind of approach. To do anything else would be reckless and irresponsible. It is very easy to sit in the back seat and read and feel the pulse of the people, to feel their frustration, to feel their fear, the worry, the stress, all of what we are all going through, the depression, and to put your finger on that pulse, or to push it in it and to twist and to push the button. But I submit to us all and to the country that it is most reckless behavior, and it is not at all in the best interest of the country to behave in that manner. Come to the table and join in the fight. Don't sit on the sideline and press. This ain't that kind of time. It's not that kind of time. And to be honest with you, if, in fact, I was sitting in opposition today, I would support the extension of the emergency powers if the other side were in government, because it makes sense. You got to work to get over here, Mr. Mitchell. You got to work and win the support of the people. But I would support the extension of these powers. We have to be very careful as we address the people, not to be disingenuous by seeking to make this debate about the current orders. As I said, it really is not what we're here to debate. So with that, I support the extension of the powers, but I would add that it should continue to be subject to monthly review by Parliament, given the nature of the orders. So I support the extension. I second the motion, but would recommend that we continue to review this issue monthly. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Senator Mitchell.
Madam President, I just want to rise on a point of order arising out of the seconded speech, because I assume this is now the government's position as the mover and seconder, that this debate is not about the orders. But I beg to point out that in the government's own resolution, the orders are in fact listed A, B, C, D, E, and we are being asked to affirm those orders. So which is the position?
You're being asked to affirm the orders.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
So the resolution, whereas pursuant to Article 21 of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that a state of public emergency for the purposes of that article exists in the Bahamas. And whereas it continues to be necessary and expedient for securing the public safety, the defense of the Bahamas, the maintenance of public order, the suppression of mutiny, rebellion, and riot, and for maintaining supplies and services essential to the life and well-being of the community, to continue in force the second proclamation, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulation 2020, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020, and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Extension of Section 17.1 of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved that these chambers approve the continuance of the second proclamation made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. Affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. Affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020 made on the 9th day of October 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. Affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020 made on the 30th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020, and affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Extension of Section 17.1 of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020, made on the 31st day of August 2020 until the 30th day of November. As many, the chair recognizes Senator Darby.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Madam President, I listened very carefully as the last speaker spoke about the emergency orders and the fact that the debate is about the emergency orders and not the contents of the emergency orders. It is of concern to me because our hospitals and ability to handle the pandemic is bursting from the seams. Our doctors and nurses are being exposed unnecessarily, and it is the government's responsibility to articulate a plan for the next 30 days, lay that plan on the table to ensure that we, as the official opposition, can assess the plan, make recommendations to the plan, and for the general public to have access to it so that the debate continues. Madam President, this morning, I thank God for health and strength as a survivor of COVID-19 and for another opportunity to stand in this honorable place to make my contribution to this resolution to extend emergency orders for another 30 days, this time until the end of November 2020. Madam President, a few days ago, I read the cabinet press release appointing Senator Sawyer as the Minister of State responsible for Grand Bahama. And thank you, leader on our side, for making that clearer, because at one point we thought he was a minister without portfolio. And his appointment is obviously to accommodate the government's parliamentary agenda and to address the resolution that is before us today. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the good senator on his new short-lived appointment, and I wish you well. As Minister for Grand Bahama, there are some pressing issues, particularly the fact that our leader on this side was stuck in Grand Bahama for the last 3 days, while an American airline aircraft that skid off the runway with 28 passengers just stayed there. As the new minister, maybe you can tell us in this place, why did it take 3 whole days to move an aircraft? And why is the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Hutchison Whampoa, and the government
taking so long to repair that airport? You know, a couple days ago, I was in Grand Bahama, and we know that Hutchison and the Port Authority receive a large sum of money from the insurance. And I looked at the couple of buildings that are being built that do not make the standard for flooding as an avenue to try to put customs and immigration in. It's an absolute disgrace. After 1 year, and you know what? We're sick and tired of the rhetoric, the political rhetoric. Fix the airport and do it immediately. It's a disgrace, and you should hold your heads in shame, including the government, and including you, Minister, who was elected the new Minister for Grand Bahama. Appointed. It's a big difference. I apologize for that. That was a slip of the tongue. Maybe it's a prophecy. We understand that Minister Thompson, who was forced to resign to make way, yes, he had to. He had no other choice. He had to move aside because the constitutional commitment in this place could not be maintained unless he was gone. But I do wish Minister Thompson, Minister Folks, and Minister Bethel, the learned Attorney General, and his families well as they go through the quarantine process. And we hope and pray that when the test is repeated, they all will be negative. Madam President, the last time we met, we on this side did not support the previous 30-day extension. And like many in our country, our position remains unchanged. At that time, we made it very clear that we could not support the resolution for the following reasons. Since March, when the first emergency orders were implemented, the government has had ample time to bring legislation to this Parliament to address this serious public health care crisis brought on by COVID-19 pandemic. But this administration has taken the easy way out and has failed to do so, which other countries have done. Instead, the government is content to invest all control of the management of this pandemic into the hands of the competent authority. Now, we've heard the arguments that he's being advised, and this and that, and the fact that everyone's on board. But the reality is, the competent authority is invested in the Prime Minister. That's the reality. He said it in the other place. And we accept his explanation. The truth of the matter is that the competent authority should have never been invested.
Point of order, Madam President. Point of order. The Honorable Senator made an allegation that the Prime Minister, the competent authority, said inside the other place that all the powers are invested in him. I would like the Honorable Senator from the opposite side to please show me some type of documentation where the Prime Minister said that, because I don't recall the Prime Minister say that. I am asking him to show me the evidence.
Senator, read the Gazette, and the Gazette will clearly
Madam
demonstrate.
President, Madam President, I know what I asked. Madam President.
I am on the floor. Let me finish. You will have an opportunity to speak after me. Yes. My answer to the question is, I direct this good senator to the Gazette, which clearly demonstrates and outlines the Prime Minister's position as the competent authority.
Point of order
The
again, Madam President.
sole competent authority.
Point of order again. Point of order.
The competent authority.
Point of order again, Madam President. Madam President, I asked the question again. I have, excuse me, Senator Mitchell. Madam President,
Prime Minister.
I ask the question again. I'm asking the honorable senator
No.
from the opposite side to please show me where did the Prime Minister said inside the other house that all powers is invested in him. That's all I want him to do. I want him to show me that.
I have no obligation to do
Well,
so.
Madam President,
Can
I
I
need to
finish?
retract the
Yes,
statement.
you asked a question. Allow me to
Madam
respond.
President,
I have no obligation to do so. Yes.
Senator Moss has asked the question on a point of order. You have elected to make your response to him that you have no obligation to do so. If the fact that you have made a suggestion or a statement that he disagrees with, if you have a response, I think it is appropriate that you respond to the question that's been asked.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Madam President, document after document, including the Gazette, will substantiate the comment I made. I have before me a letter dated the 25th of September, 2020. It was written to the leader of the opposition and the letter for explanation for quarantine. In that letter, and I would read the first line, and I'm prepared to lay this letter in this honorable place. I, Hubert Minister, Prime Minister of Bahamas, and the competent authority, pursuant to paragraph 24 of the Emergency Powers Code, has clearly outlined in this letter by and signed by the Prime Minister, not by someone else. We have seen this time and time again as the Prime Minister stood to his feet in the other place and clearly outlined what has to be done. No, I read it.
point of order again, Madam President. Madam President,
Senator Moss,
Yes.
are your point of order is that you are denying that the Prime Minister made the statement.
yes, ma'am. And yes, ma'am. I'm asking him again to please provide to this House, based on the statements that he made, that the Prime Minister said inside the other house, the lower house, that that all powers is invested through him.
Do
That's
you
the
have
competent
evidence of the Prime Minister having made that statement over and above the
Madam
letter
President.
that was produced by Senator Mitchell?
The Prime Minister
Is the competent.
is the competent authority. Allow me to finish. Is the competent authority, and as the competent authority, the powers that is vested in the competent authority falls to the Prime Minister himself.
Based on
It is implied, and because it's implied, it is now fact.
an implication does not become a fact because you say so, sir.
An implication becomes a fact when we have the Prime Minister gazetted as being the competent authority and the powers are vested in him. The approvals come from him, whether he's being advised by others or he sits in consultation with others. The ultimate approval comes through the competent authority, who is the Prime Minister. Now, if the good member wants me to retract the statement and to reword the statement, I just did it, and I'm prepared to move on. Madam President, the truth of the matter is the competent authority should have never been vested in one man because the crisis we face is unprecedented and the measures needed to navigate us out of this crisis are broad as they are diverse. Over the last 7 months, the competent authority has displayed, in my view, and the view of many citizens of this country, dictatorial traits, and refuses to be accessible and transparent to this Parliament and the Bahamian people. Standing to your feet and speaking about what you want to speak out about is not transparency. Transparency is bringing the facts to the table, laying your plan on the table for us to see, in order for us to be able to make comment and to be able to actually put input. He and this administration has failed to properly prepare our healthcare system with adequate funding, manpower resources, and supportive hospital accommodations, and with the latest international treatment modalities to reduce the COVID-19 mortality rate. It is no small wonder that the number of infectious persons continue to escalate and the deaths from COVID-19 continue to rise despite the heroic efforts from our doctors and healthcare workers. So we must ask, is the public interest served by this government COVID-19 structure? Are the interests of Bahamian citizens who elected this government served by these emergency orders? And is the competent authority acting in a competent way? Madam President, with the passing of the last emergency order, many Bahamians remain cautiously optimistic, believing that the Ministry of Health had an evidence-based plan to reduce the community spread of COVID-19, particularly in New Providence. We were told by representatives of the Ministry of Health that COVID-19 Task Force and the Ministry of Health had adequate funding and the manpower resources were in place to effectively reduce the transmission of COVID-19, and the lockdowns would help to flatten the curve as long as the public health care measures could be enforced by the relevant authorities. Unfortunately, months after curfew, lockdowns, the person-to-person transmission of COVID-19 appear to be increasing at an exponential rate. It is time to reset the button and look for new treatment modalities and protocols. In the last 5 days, Grand Bahamas recorded some 48 new cases. We thank God that the majority of these cases are asymptomatic, or the majority of individuals who have symptoms, they are mild and are in isolation at home, because we all know, and Minister Sawyer, you should know, as Minister for Grand Bahama, that the Rand Memorial Hospital is still in a state of disrepair and could not adequately respond to demand if these cases were serious. Madam President, the government's stewardship in finding the right balance between commerce, lockdowns, curfews, and the welfare of our citizens have fallen short of our expectations. And it appears that if this administration has run out of fresh ideas or simply given up in the fight. From the beginning of this pandemic, we on this side have been keeping track of the Ministry of Health COVID-19 dashboard and have been monitoring the total number of positive cases in New Providence and their distribution throughout the Family Islands. It is important to highlight that in September, when the last 1 month emergency order was extended, the country recorded some 3,467 positive COVID cases and 77 confirmed deaths from the virus. Madam President, 1 month later after the lockdowns and curfews, the total number of COVID-19 positive cases have grown by more than 2,500. And as of yesterday, the total positive cases is at a whopping 6,400, with 132 confirmed deaths from the virus. Over the last 6 days, the rate of new infection from COVID-19 has averaged above 110 per day, and the numbers and the members in the other place, and this is what I was really concerned about, the members in the other place on your side feel that the government is doing a relatively good job taking into consideration the global environment. This is not happening in many countries of our region, and I strongly suggest that the competent authority, if not paying attention, seek advice from some of the epidemiologists outside of our jurisdiction as well as professionals to determine how come they are getting better results than us. Further, the spikes of new cases in Freeport, Abaco, and Eleuthera is cause for great concern to our task force, and we believe a closer attention needs to be placed in these islands. More resources needs to be pushed into the islands, more contact tracers, and the execution of free testing, particularly in the hotspots on these islands. Madam President, the data doesn't lie. That's the good thing about information and numbers, and prove what we have been saying all along, that even with these sweeping powers given to the competent authority by way of these resolutions, we have not been successful in reducing the community spread, full stop. We have to press the button and look for new treatment modalities, protocols, and the way forward. It begs the question, are the emergency orders effective? And what benefit is being derived from the current lockdowns? The epidemiological evidence confirmed that the death rate from COVID-19 per capita in the Bahamas remain among the highest in the region. And after more than 7 months of lockdown, curfews, and the restriction of movement, the record would reflect that despite the competent authorities' efforts, the country's response to this pandemic remains at the bottom of the list as compared to our counterparts in the region. And we must ask the question, why? These are the facts, Madam President, and the competent authority must take his head out of the sand, become focused, and do away with many of the failed policies and protocols that are obviously not working on the ground. We have to press the button and reset where we're going. Madam President, the statistical models presented by the Ministry of Health prove that New Providence remains the epicenter of COVID-19 cases in our country. With daily positive cases in excess of 110, we must now question the effectiveness of the current health protocols and shift gears immediately. I want to say that again. The competent authority must shift gears immediately in order to flatten the curve and break this deadly chain of community spread. If this is not done, we believe that the current pattern of spread will continue, creating a vicious cycle and putting all of us at unnecessary risk. That is why we on this side, along with many government officials, senior government officials, are still questioning the effectiveness and the unproductiveness of these lockdowns. The lack of running water. We talk about washing and sanitizing. The lack of running water and the inability for poor social distancing in many homes and communities need to be addressed by the competent authority. The question needs to be asked, what is the government's social reform agenda for low-income families? And what are we doing with the unemployed, particularly those who are bundled up in one small community and are potentially in a position to exacerbate the spread of COVID-19? A lot has been said concerning testing, contact tracing, and the government-sponsored quarantine facilities. But the truth of the matter is, little is happening on the ground concerning these essential components that are necessary to reduce community spread. We need to hear more about these specific plans, not political rhetoric. Let us see the plans. Stop making them up as you go. Put a plan together. Articulate your 30-day plan so that we can actually make contributions to this plan. Madam President, there are few, if any, persons in this country who do not know someone who contracted the deadly virus. And we have all heard about persons who did not survive as a result of medical complications associated with being infected with COVID-19. We on this side grieve with the families, and we believe it's high time for the competent authority to have an honest discussion, not a political discussion, with the Bahamian people, because we are collectively in this fight together. Stop blaming us. Give us the tools. Give us the free masks. Allow us to have free testing. so that we will be able to comply with the rules and regulations. You know what's really hurting, Madam President? A few days ago, I drove through an inner city area and I saw a young man with a mask. The mask was so contaminated with dirt that it didn't even make a purpose to wear the mask. And we're saying, and we've been saying all along, what is happening with our social services? Why can't the government provide masks, particularly to those who cannot afford to receive them? Why can't the government give these individuals the free testing that they truly deserve, which would help us with the pandemic, rather than the political rhetoric that we are doing a good job because of the global environment? Madam President, time is not on our side. I say that again. Time is not on our side. And the longer it takes for the government to reduce the person-to-person transmission of this deadly virus and flatten the curve, our people will remain at unnecessary risk, making it harder and harder for us to climb out of this hole and to restore our local economy. In a matter of days, the Ministry of Tourism will launch its program that would eliminate the 14-day quarantine for visitors. In the midst of having 100 plus cases per day, we are now going to actually eliminate the quarantine requirements for visitor and returning residents. We on this side, we do support any well thought out plan if we could see it. The Ministry of Tourism presented a plan, so we had the ability to comment on the plan that would jumpstart the local tourism product and get Bahamians back to work in the industry. Like I said before, we are not unreasonable on the side. If we can see a plan, we can comment on the plan and we can help to improve a plan. But the plan must be safe and all risks minimized. Much has been said about the Ministry of Tourism plan, and the big question that I ask the competent authority today, are we ready? Are we ready for this plan from the Ministry of Tourism? Are the testing booths set up at our ports of entry for rapid antigen tests? Do we have the trained manpower resources or personnel at our international airport and marinas? I passed many areas and I saw nothing in place. When are they going to be put in place? Did the contract for antigen testing kits go to tender? I read a document. The question is, did it go for tender? And are the kits FDA approved? We need to put this on the table. We heard that they are there. 3 million tests have been ordered. Where did the test come from? Can we have one of the tests so we could send it to a reference lab to see whether or not the antigen test does what it says it's supposed to do? What happened to the visitor if the rapid antigen test proved to be positive at the time of testing at the port of entry? We don't see that in the plan. What happens to the visitor? Where does he go? Does he go to the hotel or does he go to a designated isolation center? And if the rapid test is positive, who would be responsible for the follow-up molecular PCR diagnostic test? Would it be the visitor or would it be the government? Would it be the airport or would it be the hotel? Who will monitor the visitor to ensure that the repeat antigen test is done in 4 days? And I read a document that says 5 days. We'd like to know, is it really 4 or 5 days? How often would hotel workers be tested? And will the government, the hotel, or the worker pick up the cost? These things we need to know because people are calling us in the industry who want to go back to work and they would like to know who will pick up the cost. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're going to answer.
For information, Madam President. Madam President, Senator asks the question, are these tests approved?
I didn't ask them to test approved. I asked them to FDA approved.
Okay, you asked them they were approved.
No, FDA.
I mean, I wasn't finished, but okay. The senator asked if the tests are approved.
No, I asked,
Madam President, can I finish?
Madam President, I didn't ask if the tests are approved.
You asked the question, they're approved by the FDA.
Thank you.
Said,
Okay,
I wasn't finished.
No, thanks.
No, but I said I wasn't finished.
No, I apologize.
Yeah.
I just want you to say FDA.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As I said, Madam President, he asked the question if the tests are approved by the FDA. Based on the information I have, Madam President, these tests were approved. They're approved to be accurate by the American Health Organization, PAHO, and by the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO. So Just want to bring it to attention.
Okay, thank you. While we knew that they were approved by the Pan-American Health Organization, my question to the government is, are they FDA approved? And whether the tests were manufactured in China or the tests were manufactured in Korea or some European country. Put the information on the table. Let us see the data so that we can actually make an informed decision. Madam President, with the number of positive cases in the country exceeding 6,400, we also understand that the potential risk there is in having face-to-face parliamentary meetings. But I am of the view, like the other countries around the world, we must continue to meet because there are so many questions are being asked about the challenges of the government's so-called protocols for COVID-19. And we continue to get disturbing news from healthcare workers informing us that they are still in the dark as it relates to policies, and many of the recommendations made by them are still uncertain. Madam President, transparency on behalf of the government must be the order of the day in our fight against this deadly virus if we intend to win. We expect the government to be transparent. We expect the government to give the opposition the necessary information in order for us and the Bahamian people to make informed decisions. Stop holding back the facts. We are tired of learning about facts when we stand to our feet. If we are going to be transparent, this information should be accessible to every individual in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. This was not demonstrated in the last 30-day extension because many healthcare workers still, from what we understand, and the government needs to clarify this, still is having difficulty of accessing personal protective equipment. And they remain in the dark and distant from major policy decisions that affect them directly. Other than periodic press conferences by the Minister of Health, the Prime Minister, no one really knows what is happening at our clinics, our ports of entry, and why certain sector of our economy is open without epidemiological evidence to support the competent authority to do so. As a healthcare professional and a business owner, I certainly understand the pressure and the need for the government to get sectors of our economy up and running, but the health and safety of our people is paramount. And we on this side cannot support the decision to extend the emergency orders without adjustment to current policies and protocols and without a clearly articulated workable 30-day plan from the competent authority. None of that has been presented. We've asked it before and we ask again. Lay on the table your 30-day plan to address the issues associated with COVID-19 in the month of November. Madam President, the PLP, and I keep hearing people saying you didn't show up to the meeting, but let me set the record straight. I showed up to one meeting on behalf of the leader of the opposition, and we were asked to articulate a few questions. After a few questions, we were told that they are now going in to make decisions, and we were asked to leave. So we were not privy to any of the decision-making process. And a lot of members in the other place make it seem like we were. We were not. We were merely summoned to the cabinet office as a PR stunt and not to genuinely be a part of the process. That is my view. This is truly sad because good ideas are not exclusive to any political organizations. Countries around the world and in the region have demonstrated political maturity, and we're asking the competent authority to follow suit with many in the region as we fight COVID-19 together as a unified force. This is why a few days ago, because we have been pushed aside, the leader on our side released our evidence PLP 10-point plan that revolves around free testing, particularly for the poor and the unemployed, and to ramp up contact tracing. Now, I heard one of the members in the other place indicated that the government is making steps to ramp up contact tracing. And to date, there is about 70 contact tracers responsible to follow the cases of individuals who have been exposed. We say that that number falls short below the national standard. And all it takes is to look at the metrics from the London School of Tropical Medicine, as well as some of the Harvard reviews, and you would realize that that number, based on what we're seeing, is way below the international recommendations. But we are asking every Bahamian to visit us on covidactionplan.org to review the contents of this plan that we believe fits well with the archipelagic nature of our country. And once again, we're saying to the government that we on this side stand ready. But while we wait, we will not be idle, because this pandemic is a crisis. And we will continue to do our part as a political organization in this critical fight to save lives and to jumpstart our local economy. Madam President, there's no question that all of our healthcare workers and those in the front line are doing their part. And all should be commended. But there's a constant need for reassurance and support by the government, and the Ministry of Health must lead the way by minimizing the potential risks to our nurses and our doctors, and to be able to provide the necessary resources that they need to do the job that they are called to do. The PLP task force will continue to recommend sound evidence-based protocols that are working in other countries, and we believe that many of these could be modified to the Bahamian model. Once again, like my colleagues in the other place, I cannot support this resolution in its current form. And without a clear COVID-19 articulated plan by the competent authority, we believe, and I pray to God that I'm wrong, that the results of November, once this resolution is passed by the majority, could be very similar to what we see in October. We say to the competent authority, please produce your plan. Put it on the table. Make your plan public so that the Bahamian people can understand what you're doing, and to ensure that we hold you accountable to the plan. You're asking for an extension for another 30 days. We believe that you're not worthy because you've squandered many of the extensions you had in the past. We cannot continue to live on in an emergency state. We need a degree of normalcy. Where is the legislation you promised that you would bring to this House or to bring to this Senate that will allow the public health care measures to be carried out without these unnecessary sweeping powers? Other countries have done it. Why are you lazy to bring it in this place? Madam President, with those words, I thank you, and I cannot support the extension of the emergency orders. Thank you.
Yes, excellent, David. Excellent. Very good.
As many? The chair recognizes Senator Jamal Moss. This is just sitting for you. Nothing. Isn't about it. It's all right.
Yeah, my trying to make sure Bahamas and sensitive to attention.
They are.
That's good. They're your friends. I have my friends. Madam President, I say I have friends. You have friends. Madam President, thank you very much for acknowledging me today as I rise to represent the youth of this nation and to speak on the extension on the emergency orders. Before I go, Madam President, I want to send best well wishes to my colleagues here in the Senate, Senator the Honorable Crazy Thompson, also Senator the Honorable Dion Folks, and also Senator the Honorable Carl Bethel, whom right now presently are quarantined, self-quarantined. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. May God continue to keep you safe, and also to my colleagues, parliamentarians who may have contracted the virus. Minister the Honorable, exposed to the virus. Minister the Honorable Desmond Bannister. My prayers are with you. Madam President, we are here again to debate why we should have this extension. I want to make it abundantly clear that I support this extension because it's a sensible thing to do. Madam President, look around. Look around. Look around the world today. The world is going through a crisis and a pandemic. Governments around the world are taking measures, precautions, and extreme steps to ensure the safety of the nation and its people. You know, I watched a movie 2 days ago, and the movie was Pirates of the Caribbean. You know, Captain Jack Sparrow said in the movie, the problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. Let me say that again. Because I could feel where some people caught it, but the others fly over. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude towards the problem. You know, Madam President, that is a very powerful quote. The problem is not the problem. The problem is the attitude and their attitude towards the problem. All right. Over the past several months, the opposition and others have shown an attitude that leaves me and right-thinking Bahamians to wonder if they really care about the people. It leaves me to wonder if they are serious about joining the executive branch of the government, working hand in hand for the betterment of the Bahamas. It leads me to wonder, Madam President, based on their attitude, if they want this country, recall whom to be successful in the fight against this deadly virus. Madam President, this mixed-up bunch have been swinging all over the place when it comes to being a team player in the name of unity. My fellow Bahamians, they will say yes, they care about the people. But if they really do, why aren't they not comprehending that there is a killer virus on the loose and precautions, safety nets must be put in place or keep in place in the event things get out of hand? Wow. My fellow Bahamians, we have seen where countries such as Canada, England, Italy, New Zealand, and the list goes on, all strap up their boots, put on their war gear called sense, and put measures in place to safeguard their country, their people, and their future. Not because they want to take away people's rights, not because they want to control you. Instead, lives were at stake, and it was the right and moral thing to do. Andy Gilman said, and I quote,
Who's Andy Gilman, man?
good luck. The secret of crisis management is not good versus bad. It's preventing the bad from getting worse. Now, the opposition and the critics who believe they know it all would say, well, you know, things are getting worse, Senator. That's what they would say, Madam President. Things are getting worse. But truth be told, my fellow Bahamians, the Bahamas government is doing what many are now doing around the world and are following. And let me say it again. The Bahamas government is doing what many are now around the world are doing and are following when it comes to putting measures in place to protect its people and its overburdened healthcare. Over in Barcelona, Spain, they are now buckling under the resurgence of the coronavirus in Europe. In Europe, the Spanish government on Sunday declared a national state of emergency that includes an overnight curfew in hopes of not repeating the near collapse of the country's hospitals. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said, and I quote, "The decision to restrict free movement on the streets of Spain between 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. allows expectations for community work, buying medicine, and caring for elderly and young family members." He said the curfew takes effect Sunday night and would likely remain in place for 6 months. This is what the Prime Minister of Spain said. He also added, my fellow Bahamians, the reality is that the European and Spain are immersed in a second wave of the pandemic. Sanchez said during a nationwide address after meeting with his cabinet, "The situation we are living in is extreme." End quote. Madam President, we are talking about a country that is, I would say, about 50 times bigger than the Bahamas, population-wise, everything. And they are now sounding the alarm. They are now saying that they cannot afford their hospitals to collapse. Mind you, they got more hospitals than the Bahamas, but they cannot afford their hospitals to collapse. And they said that with these measures that they are putting in place, is to ensure the safety of their people. That is what real leaders do. That's what real governments do. There you go. I'm killing a bug. Madam President, leaders who have no time to play politics are doing what needs to be done to protect their country from a serious and unwanted collapse. But my fellow Bahamians, I can't say that about the opposition when it comes to putting away the politics during this time. This playful bunch has shown that they will do everything in their parliamentary power to muddy up the waters just to create a society of confusion and disorder. My fellow Bahamians, the same opposition who is in one breath says no lockdowns. No lockdowns. That's what they say. They go on TV. They go on they go on TV. They go on their press release. They even said this. They just said a while ago, no lockdowns. Even on I don't know. The headquarters, they said no lockdowns.
What do they say about the street? No lockdown street?
We ain't into that. That's what they say, Madam President. Yet their own COVID team. What's it said, Darius? Like I said, they say that publicly just to appease some people, or to be just, I don't know, towards the government. But then quietly, their own COVID team said quietly that they recommend a 2-week lockdown. That's what the PLP's created COVID task force team said.
Let's see what happens.
Imagine that.
Show it to me.
Imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine that.
Show it to me.
Imagine it.
Show it to me.
In the public, you're screaming on top of your head, but quietly, you are suggesting a 2-week lockdown. Wow. Wow. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy at its finest example.
Position, heal thyself.
As I have said before, and I will say it again, Senator Mitchell,
Heal thyself.
the hypocrisy
Heal thyself.
in this PLP
Heal thyself, my friend.
is legendary.
Heal thyself.
Legendary.
Heal thyself.
Madam President, I hear the noise. And, you know, you can hear it again. I hear the noise where it's being said or argued that the lockdowns or curfews are contributing to the rise in cases. I say to those who are supposed to be well educated, to don't mix yourself up in foolish talk. The reality is, the reasons for the lockdown is because of the confirmed cases that came before the decision of the lockdown. And based on the data and trends, it shows that based on the fast rate we are moving with the foot on the gas, more will be confirmed or come if we don't throw the yield or stop sign up. Real leaders make the hard decisions to safeguard a nation going on a collision course. Let me say that again. Because, anyway, let me just say that again. Real leaders make the hard decisions to safeguard a nation from going on a collision course. And that is what this administration is doing. Madam President, a few months ago, it was reported that Italy, Spain, and France reported declines in daily coronavirus death tolls. The government said, those governments said, they don't plan to lift national lockdowns and social distancing rules anytime soon. But after a few months of opening, just Sunday gone, Spain found themselves reverting back to putting restricted movement and banned travel between regions. So, you know, in other words, Madam President, what they are saying is this, is that when they went through that first wave, the lockdowns have proven fruitful. It was successful. It was very successful. Despite those who may have complained in their respective jurisdiction. But it was very successful. And after they opened up, let me get this again. After they open up, make sure the main people let me. But after they open up, things were, things got out of hand, and now they found themselves reverting back to putting restrictions in place, and also ban travel between the regions. My fellow Bahamians, the opposition to their social media cohorts are spewing this talk that the competent authority, who is the Prime Minister, is a dictator. No. I can go into that. Don't worry, I can go into that. I can address that. That the Prime Minister is a dictator. What's sad, my fellow Bahamians, is that the opposition, who has years of cabinet experience under their belt, knows very well that the competent authority, along with the cabinet, meets with professionals responsible, listen to the reports that are being presented, questions will be asked before a decision is made. Parliamentarians from both houses, who are also invited in that meeting, are able or given the opportunity to ask questions. Oh, yes, I was. I made that very clear the last time when you had it out. I made it very clear.
Sorry?
Right. Like I was saying. So, you know, this whole thing that they're putting out there, that the Prime Minister is the sole competent authority as relates to all the powers invested in him, and he makes a decision based on how he feels, is totally false. And I can tell you, my fellow Bahamians, based on my experience as a first-time parliamentarian, that those who came before me, who are now opposite, who have years of cabinet experience, can tell you, if they would be honest, that what I am saying is the truth. That at the end of the day, before a decision is made on a national level, the Prime Minister meets with his cabinet colleagues and they will make a decision.
But in this situation, my fellow Bahamians, I am very grateful. I am very grateful to the Prime Minister, the competent, who is listed as the competent authority, for allowing himself to be one that listens not just to the health professionals, not just being one who meets with his cabinet, but also allowing the parliamentarians from the lower house and up in this upper house to be a part of that meeting, to get first-hand information and also to ask questions. So at the end of the day, we can make an informed decision. That is what you call democracy. That is not dictatorship. Senator boss of where do they get this stuff? Do they just wake up and say, you know what? We're going to say the Prime Minister, the dictator.
Speak into your mic, Senator. Speak to your mic.
My apologies, Mr. Minister. But but like I said, Madam President, and my Senator colleagues, and my fellow Bahamians, the Prime Minister is not a dictator. I am speaking as one who can say that we have had meetings. Just most recently, we had a meeting that had been Saturday. We had a meeting and we went through all these things. We even met with persons from PAHO, which, the opposition was supposed to be there, but they never showed up. But at the end of the day, we were given the opportunity under a democratic style government where we were allowed to ask questions, get responses, and we go from there and before decisions made. So my fellow Bahamians, based on opposition's stellar record of being absent from crucial meetings that can help the country, all because they are busy showing that if it isn't their way, then there's no way. That, in my view, is a sign or trait of a dictatorship. If I can't have my way, then I'll be saying in the streets of Madam President, allow me. That's what they're basically saying. Come on. Madam President, if it's offensive, I do apologize. I retract that. If you find it offensive, Madam President, I do yield to you. But that's what they're saying, Madam President. That's what they're saying. If I cannot have my way, then so be it. I'm not going to be a part of it. That's a dictatorship. Thank you, Mitchell. Senator Mitchell. As Mitchell say, is it a day we on the highway? Last night, Madam President, while I was watching Fox News, it was reported that that Utah, one of the states in America, is experiencing a medical crisis. Wow. That's my next thought. When I say next, I don't mean the United States. So come on. The president of the Utah Hospital Association warns that Utah may soon reach its maximum occupancy for intensive care unit beds based on the worsening trends reported at hospitals already at the growing number of COVID-19 cases. He said, and I quote, President, we just know that hospitalizations follow the disease, and so we have to think in the next week or two that we're going to be at the maximum of or even our contingency plans for ICU beds, said Greg Bell, president of the Utah Hospital Association. They have listed their standards as to who will receive medical help first. I want you to see where I'm going with this now. They have listed their standards as to who will receive medical help first. Pregnant patients being prioritized. Patients getting worse move out first. Younger patients get priority over older when conditions is the same. That's their standard. The governor of Utah said, and I quote, Utah, that's what I'm saying, following on with this. Yeah, you're making my point clear. The governor of Utah said, and I quote, Utah is at a turning point this week, and our hospitals are on the verge of being unable to meet the ever-increasing demand for critical care. The governor, while warning his people, is at the same time making decisions based on the advice of the health professionals. I ask the question, is that dictatorship? Or is that a leader who is showing to be disciplined and is listening to the professionals.
Thank you.
Again, that was said last night. But most recently, here, taking it back home in the Bahamas, the Bahamas Medical Association president, Dr. Marcus Cooper, recently warned that if the Bahamas exceeds its COVID-19 bed capacity, health officials will be forced to start rationing care. My Lord. He further went on and said, if you estimate that, then probably, shortly we will be approaching 2,000 cases. 1% of that would be 20 and 2% of that would be 40, he said. Cooper went on and said that there are fewer than 30 intensive care units, ICU beds in the Bahamas. He said that there are roughly 17 at Princess Margaret Hospital, 8 at Doctors Hospital, and 2 at the Rand Memorial Hospital in Grand Bahama. So, if you take those numbers into consideration, it would only take 2% of 2,000 people to exceed our capacity of critical care beds. Definitely exceed it. That's what Cooper said. And he ended by saying, Madam President, but you also have to take into consideration that we have people in hospitals at this time that have had heart attacks, that have had strokes, that have had motor vehicle accidents, that are requiring ICU and every other manner of illness that typically takes up ICU and critical care beds. And Madam President, how can they fix their mouths to criticize, call the competent authority a dictator, when the competent authority has said in Parliament, press conferences, and even in his national addresses from March, that his government is guided by the health professionals? The Prime Minister and his government is guided by the health professionals. I say that to say, Madam President, it isn't the rhetoric that was said a while ago when I've heard the Prime Minister say that all the powers come through me and I'm going to make all the decisions. That's a bunch of foolishness. The Prime Minister never said that. And when I challenged the Senator, he cannot back it up. But the fact of the matter, the fact of the matter is this, Madam President. The fact of the matter is this, Madam President, that the Prime Minister, along with the Cabinet, before making a decision, meets with the health professionals, asks the questions, and they go from there. That's democracy. Now, but when I hear the opposition, I don't want to throw them out. When I hear the opposition say or talk about dictatorship, oh, these things are dictatorship. You're trying to kill the people. And all this. I ask the question, based on what I have laid out with respect to what's happening around the world, what's happening in America, and even happening at home. If you watch the train, you see it. Is that, are they saying that the health professionals are dictators? Are they saying that the health professionals don't know what they're doing? Are they saying that they would do a better job than the health professionals, despite their attendance records at meetings being sour? My fellow Bahamians, based on the opposition's continued foolish and ill-advised decisions, I believe the country would have been catching hell and Bahamians would have found themselves running to the hills under their administration. The truth of the matter is this. The present government's decision may not be favorable by all, and we get that. And we accept that. But truth be told, that the decisions thus far has made a bad situation from going worse, as Andy Gilman says. Madam President, allow me through you to remind your opposition and give them an example of how bad of a situation could have gone worse, and how they chickened out when it came to taking a stand to protect our people. The government was faced with a crucial decision whether to lock down Bimini or allow the virus to guarantee the island to be infected at uncontrollable levels that can possibly wipe out a small population. A caring government that cares about the people and not the political or their political capital did the right thing and locked down the island for 2 weeks. The results after the lockdown have shown to be the best thing, and it saved lives. The noise in the market was against it, but history will show that the Minutes-led administration did the right thing while the Davis-led opposition played hide and seek. My fellow Bahamians, that right there is a clear difference in leadership. Clear difference. Like far. No comparison. None. None whatsoever. According to the 26th president, Mr. Theodore Roosevelt, and he said this quote, in any moment of decisions, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. Madam President, based on that quote from the 26th president, that's exactly what the opposition is doing. Nothing. Nothing. My fellow Bahamians, as the country gears to open up next month, we must continue to practice social distancing and be mindful of unnecessary trips and social distancing. Be mindful of necessary trips and social distancing, yet social interactions. I know that we have Bahamians who wish the lockdowns or curfews would come to an end so we could return back to normal. I am one of them. I would like for things to go back. But the reality is this, my fellow Bahamians, is that we are dealing with a global pandemic. We are dealing with a virus that we cannot see, but we know that it exists. We are dealing with an enemy that has the power to do astronomical damages to our body, and even to the point of fatal. And we don't want that. We may have had some cases, but we cannot afford that. We cannot afford more beautiful Bahamian souls leaving us because of this virus. But until that day we return back to normal, I am one of them who is ready to stand on the grounds of common sense and right thinking to allow measures to be put in place to safeguard not just me, not just my family, not just my colleagues, but also for you, the Bahamian people. I care about you. That's why I fight. That's why they attack me, but I fight them. Because at the end, they care for you. I say to say is this. It will be again upon us to show that we are disciplined enough to do our part to keep the numbers down. You know, Madam President, I spoke to, someone who was successful in their recovery. A young man. I won't call his name, but we had a very deep conversation. And he said that, Senator, I would like the people to know my story. I would like the people to know that this virus is no joke. Do not mind the talks about there's a hoax. Don't mind that. This virus is real. Yeah, and Bahamians are actually experiencing that as well. But Madam President, the person said that what they went through when it came to challenges of breathing, they felt like the inside was on fire, they couldn't handle it. You know, and they even describe one of the symptoms of not being able to taste. They say that if people understand that particular part, I mean, the burning part is one thing, but the fact that you can't even taste what you're eating, they said that mentally that cause you crazy. And I'm only quoting what was expressed to me. But to wrap it up on that part, Madam President, they're saying basically they want the Bahamian people to understand this is not a joke. They were one of the fortunate ones to survive because at that point they felt like they was getting ready to go. I say to you, my fellow Bahamians, we might look strong, but we don't know what's going on inside of us. We don't know if our immune system is weak. We don't know. We don't know what other issues we may be having. And this virus thrives on that. It loves that. That's how it becomes even stronger. So you have to do everything in your power to make sure that you social distance, wash your hands, hand sanitize, wear your mask, follow the health professionals. Because at the end of the day, you don't want that. And you don't want to give it to someone close to you, not even knowing that you have it. So you have to do everything in your power to be extreme when it comes to taking precautions. And that is what this government is doing. We're trying our best to help you. This is not a political matter. The virus is not like your regular flu. When you cough a couple of times and then it goes. This virus can be deadly. Persons who had or have had the virus can tell you that the recovery can be slow, incomplete, and costly, with a huge impact on quality of life. Hotel owners have already said that they will not open or fully open if we as a people, can get our act together and allow the numbers to go down. On October 9th, 2020, Bahama president said that the resort cannot reopen until COVID-19 numbers in the Bahamas are lowered and urged Bahamians. He didn't say Prime Minister Miller. He didn't say Minister of Health, Ronald Wells. He didn't say Madam President. He said Bahamians. He urged Bahamians to do their part and make that happen. He also said, when it comes to reopening, he said, I certainly hope so. It really depends on everyone doing their job in the Bahamas to get COVID out and get us down to a very low level that is manageable. And there are statistics that show it can be done. He said again, there are statistics that shows it can be done. There are countries around the world that have kicked it out completely, much larger countries than we are. So I know it's possible and encourage everyone to do their part. He added, let's take it seriously. Where we are currently right now on the State Department, we are on a level 4 that says do not travel to the Bahamas. I want you to understand how serious this is. Right now in the state of New York, state of emergency orders, the Bahamas is listed as a country where you need to quarantine for 14 days upon return from a vacation. All of these are impediments to travel. So in other words, tourists will not come here and be forced to take a 14-day quarantine and then they go back and do another 14-day quarantine. We lose out on the tourist dollar. We lose out in ensuring that the man on the streets or the single mother returning back to work. I call on hotel workers who may have friends that like to have fun, go to secret spots or whatever, to encourage them. So look here, man. You're my boy. You're my spa. You're my brethren. You're my dog. The man, look, I need you all to just to practice social distancing. I need you all to don't worry about those parties right now, man. Because at the end, I speak in the common man language right now. I need you all to practice this and follow the health protocols. So at the end of the day, we can get these numbers back down and I can return back to work and my colleagues can return back to work. So at the end of the day, I can be able to really put food on my table as a proud Bahamian. It starts with us and it ends with us. That's what we need to be doing. We need to be encouraging our fellow Bahamians because this is messing up a lot of bread and butter for folks. The folks out there. You know, Margie Johnson once said, and I quote, "When you face a crisis, you know who are your true friends. You know who are your true friends." Yes. My fellow Bahamians, we must take self-responsibility, practice following the social distance, practice following the health protocols, and also practice social distancing. The emergency order is a non-issue. It falls within the Constitution, which means it is legal. When that day of discussion, comes of discussion amongst us before decisions made, I will suggest that we extend the curfew hours, open the beaches, and I will even fight for some other stuff. But at the end of the day, my colleagues and my fellow Bahamians, as I pledge to do that for you in our meetings, I just need you to pledge to me and to the people of the Bahamas that you will do your part to ensure that when this November 1st opening takes place, that we are going to do our part of social distancing, washing our hands, wearing our masks, have your hand sanitizers, and the list goes on. It's our time now to do our part. It's our time to shine, especially as young people, to show leadership, disciplined behavior, and sensible decision making that we can do this. We need Bahama to fully open up. We need Atlantis to fully open up. We need those other hotels to open up. We need other jobs to open up so Bahamians can go back and feel the dignity again. But it all depends on us, the Bahamian people. The opposition is not a fan of being positive. The opposition is not a fan of making sensible decisions. The opposition is not a fan of encouraging Bahamians to do their part. Instead, the opposition is about gloom and doom. The opposition is about the blame game. The opposition is about playing politics until election day. The opposition is not about progress or accountability. But I say to you, my fellow Bahamians, we don't need that. We don't need that type of bad vibes around us. Instead, we need continued leadership at the helm to guide us through this perfect storm. And as I close, Madam President, I am reminded by the scripture in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. And I want to share it with you, my fellow Bahamians. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them. For it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. End quote. The God that we serve is a good God. The God that we serve is a great God. The God that we serve, who I know of, has never once turned its back or left the Bahamas. The God that we serve has made it very clear, and I hope that the diocese will help me, that God does not put much on you that you cannot handle. I can paraphrase that. Amen. So I say to you, and God is a God, our God, is a God that gives us the will, gives us the discernment, everything to fight these evils that challenge us. And I know for a fact that the God that we serve will not leave us. And I say to you, Madam President, that the Bahamas will be successful. The Bahamas will beat this virus. And the Bahamas will declare that the God that we serve has led us from the woods to the mountaintop. And Madam President, by that, I want to remind this House that I, Senator the Honorable Jamal Morse, support the extension of the resolution.
Chair recognizes Senator Mitchell.
Yes, Madam President, you know, I'm reminded that even the devil quotes scripture sometimes, you know. Point of order. There was an allegation made which I wish to take issue with.
Is this point of order,
Point of order.
Senator?
Point of order. I didn't want to interrupt him. And that is this business of the question of health professionals. I think he made some point about health professionals. What he's saying was the Progressive Liberal Party attacking health professionals. At no time was any attack directed at health professionals. Our debate is a political debate, and we deal with the political level people. That's all I say for now. I wish to make that abundantly clear. And it is my hope, wish, desire that the same way, I'm sure you will exercise that same privilege to this side, that someone can assert so boldly that someone is not a dictator, that we will be allowed to say that person is a dictator from the other side. Thank you.
Madam President.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I carefully gave examples reminding the opposition that decisions that the competent authority and the executive makes, or cabinet makes, is not solely by them on top of their heads. They're meeting with the health professionals, listening to and reading the reports, asking questions, and based on what the health professionals suggest, the government is guided by the health professionals. So when you attack these measures are coming from the health professionals or suggested by the health professionals. So I said to say, Madam President, that the opposition has to be careful and responsible in attacking these decisions that they know very well are coming from the health professionals. They've went on in the media and said they've suggested these things. So I don't know why the senator opposite is playing this innocent game.
Madam President,
One second, Senator Mitchell. I'm Senator Moss. I'm not quite sure I understand what your last comment was.
You know,
Madam President, what I'm simply saying is at the end of the day, the decisions that are being made based on the suggestions of the health professionals.
Okay.
yes, and I am making a very narrow point, The senator dismissed this letter. This is the evidence here. In law, the prime minister is the competent authority, the sole person responsible in law.
Is that the letter that you brought up
Yes,
earlier?
this is the letter right here. The prime minister signs it, the sole person responsible in law.
And the source
And
of
the point I was
source
making,
of the letter,
no, it's
Senator.
written to the leader of the opposition. No, I don't want to table it. So there's no response that's needed. No response needed. All I say is The narrow point is we made no attack on health professionals, and don't be hiding yourself behind that. In law, the competent authority is the Prime Minister. Our dealings are with the political authority. That's the point I'm making.
Madam President, again, point of order, Madam President. As we've dealt with this, nobody is denying that the Prime Minister is the competent authority. The fact, no. The fact of the matter is this, right? The fact of the matter is this, right? Please stop interrupting while I'm interrupting you, okay? I'm saying to you is this: the competent authority is made up of the cabinet, and the competent authority being the figure. The competent authority is the figurehead that is going to speak on behalf of the decision of the cabinet.
Speak, please.
No, sir.
This is a letter written by the Prime Minister to the Honorable Philip E. Davis. The content of the letter is centered around a letter of exemption from quarantine. I will read the letter so that we're all on the same page as to the question that's on the table. I, Hubert A. Minnis, Prime Minister of the Bahamas, and the competent authority pursuant to paragraph 24 of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 6 Order 2020, do hereby exempt the members of Parliament and senators of the Progressive Liberal Party from the restrictions contained in paragraph 16.1a and b and 16.3 of the said Number 6 Order, so as to permit the members of Parliament and senators of the Progressive Liberal Party, being senior government officials, to travel in the Bahamas without being placed into mandatory 14-day quarantine upon arrival in any island or key, and without the need to obtain a COVID-19 RT-PCR test with negative results before traveling inter-island from New Providence. All established protocols for mask wearing, sanitation, and physical distancing must be adhered to at all times by the said senior government officials. Yours sincerely, Hubert A. Minnis, Prime Minister. The letter says in its content that as Prime Minister of the Bahamas and the competent authority pursuant to the indications that I have already stated, I think the question on the table is whether or not, as the competent authority, the Prime Minister solely and all by himself, without any input from anyone else, health officials, members of the cabinet, etc., will make a decision without any clarity. And the question is, as the competent authority, does he alone make decisions? The fact that the word is used as Hubert Minnis, the competent authority, I think is inherent in the fact that he makes his decisions in consultation.
Madam President.
And that's the question I think that's on the floor.
Madam President, in law, the Prime Minister cannot go before a court and say, they advised me to do it. He signed it. It's his decision. You can't come and say, I'm hiding behind the gown tails of somebody who advised me. That is a foolish proposition in law. Ab initio. Foolish. Cannot stand.
Madam President, again, I say to Senator Mitchell, you know, as a senior former cabinet minister, with all the years in your belt, that the Prime Minister, who is the competent authority, yes, he may be the competent authority, you know very well that the Prime Minister is guided, competent authority, whatever. Madam President, I have the floor. The Prime Minister is guided by the executive and also by health professionals. You all are making political.
Senator Moss, Senator Mitchell.
Excuse me.
Senator Mitchell, can you, we are going to make the assumption that,
And I respect that, Madam President.
in a court of law, which this is not, that letter may be substantiated. Unfortunately, I'm not an attorney. Never been before the courts. Never studied law. Okay? I'm a physician by training. That is what I practice. And Senator Mitchell feels very strongly that he can go before the judge at the bar and say, this makes the Prime Minister, the competent authority, solely responsible for the decision that is made. There are always mitigating circumstances and evidence in any case. And therefore, we will allow whatever is stated on the paper to stand. We will not argue any further about the issue. Okay?
And Madam President, I appreciate your response and your decision. And again, I just want to say, excuse me.
Let him finish. Let him finish. You choose to do what you do when he's finished. As far as I am concerned, the matter is closed. Then Senator Moss, please take your seat.
Madam President,
Senator Moss, please take
dictatorship.
your seat.
Madam President,
Yes,
in the heat of the moment, I rise on a second point of order, and I raise Rule 31, sub 15 of the rules. When Senator Mitchell rose, he would have indicated even the devil quotes scriptures. And by reference to what he said, it would seem to me that he was clearly suggesting that Senator Moss is the devil. I find those words to be very insulting and offensive and unparliamentary in nature, and would ask that it be withdrawn.
Withdrawn. Grovelingly.
Thank you, Senator Mister.
Point of order, Madam President. Madam President, this needs to be addressed. The Honorable Senator stood on her feet and brought this matter to your attention, and I thank her for that. But the response from Senator Mitchell was unbecoming. He said, grovel, grovel, Lisa, grovel. First of all, she is Senator, the Honorable Boss McDean.
I didn't hear.
Well, he said, a grovel, grovel, Lisa. He shouldn't be doing that. So again, I'm asking him. I am asking you to please apologize to the Honorable Senator. Madam President, you see what I'm saying? The tricks?
Senator
Very rude.
Mitchell. Thank you. I think in response to the point of order that Senator Dean brought up, if you are going to appropriately withdraw, then withdraw to the senator, not to Lisa.
Oh, I apologize and I withdraw to the senator. I apologize to Madam President, and I grovelingly.
No, you don't. You don't have to grovel. You can just say it the way you would do.
The point I'm making. Yes, of course. But my point is, I have never met.
That's all I want.
Never
That's
met.
all I want.
I've never
Senator
met
Mitchell.
such a humorless bunch. I mean, gee.
Okay.
You know,
No, we're not a humorless bunch.
it's like we're in a
We are
straight jacket
senators.
here.
No,
This
sir.
is a parliament.
Well,
You
we
just
can see
indicate-
that you were not in a straitjacket.
You indicated, Madam President, you are
All I'm
not a
asking-
lawyer. You are in the High Court of Parliament. You are presiding over the Parliament. You're not a doctor in this place.
I never said I
You're
was.
the High Court of Parliament, and so you're called upon to
And so I must
adjudicate what members say. The matter was at an end.
and that's why I
And
asked
now
Senator
you-
Moss
now-
to take his
now-
seat.
now-
I subsequent to that,
and now
we
you
talked
want to
about
straight jacket this
I
member
felt was
into how
I
I
am
am
not
to withdraw a
straight
statement.
jacketing you. No, I said if you're going to say that you withdraw the statement about Senator Dean, then it must be withdrawn from Senator Dean. That is all that I'm saying. You said Lisa.
No, madam. No, madam. No, sir. I would never Did I actually say that? Madam President, I don't think I have ever called this senator by her first name in my life. Never. And I would not do so in this place.
Okay, fine. As many. The
Thank
chair
you.
recognizes Senator Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. Very, very heated debate. So let me see if I can add my input to the emergency extensions.
Are you about to add
Madam
your
President?
input, Senator, to the heat?
No, I'm carrying
To the
on.
resolution.
Yep.
Madam President, right? The 1 o'clock hour is coming up. And the question is, in terms of the order that this government intends to follow, are we to take the luncheon break, which is scheduled in the order paper, or what does the government intend? Because that was not established at the start.
We normally don't establish it at the start, Senator. A few minutes before the 1 o'clock break hour, we will put forth a motion that we will either work through or take the lunch break.
Well, the point I'm making, Madam President, we have this back and forth about the way this place is run, is the senator is about to begin her address. Why would we, knowing that she has 45 minutes to speak, it's now 12:20, why would we wait until 2 minutes to 1 to get up to decide whether or not we're going to break or pass a resolution?
We are
That's
going
why-
to
that's why I'm raising it at this
allow
point.
Senator Davis to begin her contribution to the debate. We will determine at the appropriate time whether we will let her go past 1 o'clock or whether we will take a break. We will not be, I think, inappropriate to Senator Davis by shutting her down in the middle of her presentation. She can be guaranteed of that.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, almost 3 months ago, inside this chamber, we debated a previous extension of the continuation of the state of emergency proclamation. The government argued then that it was necessary to equip this administration with the tools required to combat the community spread of COVID-19. They argued that this was the only path to defeating the virus. They argued that the suspension of our constitutional right to achieve the national good was imperative despite the lack of a cohesive plan. And while I am fully aware of the incompetence of this administration, never would I have imagined a government led by Prime Minister Minnis, a medical doctor, would have fundamentally failed in so many ways in response to a pandemic. Furthermore, the failure of this administration comes with a human cost that is too great of a burden for us as a society to continue to bear. How does the human cost look? To date, more than 100 Bahamians have died. We have over 6,000 positive cases of COVID-19, and thousands of Bahamians are unemployed, and our largest industry still stands at a screeching halt. Madam President, like so many Bahamians, we know firsthand that almost everything that went wrong with this administration's response to the pandemic was both predictable and preventable. This administration left the Bahamian people defenseless, as well as leaving our public health system ill-prepared. The side opposite short-sighted leadership and gross ineptitude have led to a catastrophe of their own making. The Bahamian people trusted this administration to help guide us through this disaster. I recall some celebrating the fact that we had a PM who is also a doctor, in expectation of great command during this health crisis. The Bahamian people trusted this government to use the months of sacrifice we made as a country to improve our effectiveness to respond to the virus. Instead, they abused our trust and squandered our sacrifices. And more than 8 months later, there's no national plan and no coherent direction for us to follow. Madam President, the question we all ask ourselves today, how did we get to such a low point? Did it have to be this bad for Bahamians? My political colleagues on the opposite side seek to justify their failures by drawing a parallel with how countries are responding globally. And they see nothing wrong with that. That reminds us of an old saying, misery loves company. Instead of seeing how countries are succeeding, they much rather identify with the lots of failures. I submit, Madam President, that a successful public policy tells us that we should adopt methodologies and strategies that work. And might I add, our neighboring Caribbean countries are not experiencing the levels of failure that continues to persist in our country. In fact, it is clear by merely visiting the webpage of Sandals to see all other properties around the Caribbean have opened for business. People are back to work. Tourists are flying in. And here we are, a few days shy of November, and our hotels remain closed. What is so egregious is the blatant lack of leadership in the middle of this crisis. Why is this administration so content with failing the Bahamian people? How does each of you, as members of the governing party, find comfort in clusters of failures by your government? Madam President, this is mind-boggling. It is as if the side opposite are in a twilight zone. Snap out of it. Businesses are shutting down. Families are hurting. Bahamians are jobless. Our economy is at failure's doorstep. The education platform is not working. Every child does not have access to virtual learning. Teachers are frustrated. Parents are burdened. Crimes are still being committed even while we are under curfew. In my opinion, Grand Bahama, Abaco, and Ragged Island have yet to get real relief from the storms that have ravished the island. Unemployment through the roof. Eleuthera Clinic is being hosted under a tent. Our healthcare system is completely exhausted, and our medical professionals have been stretched to an unbearable limit. BPL, even with little usage from hotels, is still struggling to keep the lights on. The food assistance program is giving out $20 vouchers. NIB now decreased assistance to $75. And the list goes on and on and on. And the best idea the Bahamian people received from this minute's administration is countless emergency orders, extensions, and lockdowns. Where are the ideas, plans, and protocols coming out of the F&M? I want every Bahamian to remember. Look around the room. Remember the faces of those on the side opposite. While they may come with their fancy speeches, this is the team that banged on the table and supported blindly that 72-hour policy, which I hold fast to today, has caused us to lose control of fighting this virus. And I ask, was it worth it? Madam President, the excuses are insulting. The response to this crisis is appalling, and the lack of leadership, frightening. We cannot continue on this path as a country. Madam President, The opposition have said from day one, lockdowns alone are not a plan. The opposition said from day one that Bahamian people deserve to know how the government justifies arriving at its policy decisions. The opposition have said from day one that transparency in the middle of a crisis is not a luxury. It's a basic entitlement in a free society. Madam President, we owe it to the Bahamian people as political directorate to get this right. There is so much at stake. We have so much to lose if we willfully ignore the tested and proven approach to combating the virus. The government must come to appreciate very quickly that there's no substitute for political scrutiny in the middle of a crisis. Collectively, where do we go from here? The Progressive Liberal Party announced an action plan to help steer our country towards a path of successfully containing the community transmission of COVID-19. The core element of that plan was the belief that any Bahamian who was exposed to COVID-19 has a right to be tested free of charge.
Amen.
We have said that the government's testing protocol was inadequate and didn't address the challenge of identifying asymptomatic carriers who are key to spreading the virus. Why is the government creating barriers for Bahamians who want to be tested? Where is the logic behind charging Bahamians for testing? There's sufficient literature that expounds on the importance of contact tracing and isolation. And this administration refuses to create jobs for Bahamians, improving the capacity of contact tracing by hiring unemployed Bahamians and training them as contact tracers. Why 8 months in and our frontline workers still struggle to find the necessary PPEs? Madam President, the plan laid out by the leader of the Progressive Liberal Party is straightforward. Number one, test. Make free testing available to Bahamians. Expand testing centers and add rapid antigen testing to our arsenal. Test results should be returned within 24 hours. Number two, trace. Hire and train new contact tracers in New Providence, Grand Bahama, Bimini, Eleuthera, Abaco, and Exuma. Deploy a minimum of 250 tracers in Nassau. Speed up alerts to those who have been exposed to a positive case. Engage a mobile team that can be deployed to oversee contact tracing on any island as needed. Number three, isolate. Protect families and communities by providing safe, comfortable facilities for COVID. Positive individuals who have mild or no symptoms and need a place to stay until they are no longer infectious. Number four, treat. Secure therapeutic medicines to reduce severity and duration of COVID illness. Expand personal and hospital capacity. Ensure all clinics on family islands have necessary medical supplies, including oxygen, to support COVID patients until they can be evacuated to the hospital. Number five, protect. Protect doctors, nurses, hospital staff with sufficient personal protective equipment. Improve protocols to shield non-COVID hospital patients from exposure to the virus. Number six, educate. Begin a major public education campaign that include updated information about how COVID-19 spreads. Advertise information about flu vaccines and mental health resources. Number seven, ventilate. Infectious virus particles can accumulate in poorly ventilated indoor spaces and lead to super spreading events. Move as much activity as possible outdoors and improve indoor air in schools, healthcare settings, homes, workplaces, and churches using ventilation and air filtration. Number eight, build trust. Expand the competent authority to include a range of experts, enforce rules fairly and equitably, track the country's positive rate on the dashboard so the nation's progress can easily be accessed by citizens. Number 9, track and support recoveries. Some people continue to experience a wide range of symptoms months after they've recovered. The Ministry of Health should track COVID recoveries and provide support. And number 10, provide economic support. Deliver emergency cash support to enable people to buy food, water, pay for gas, electricity, support small business payrolls, work with landlords and banks so people can stay in their homes. Madam President, I end on this note. We must reverse course. We must reset and bring about a real plan to protect against this virus. The government intends to open up our borders once again, the 1st of November, but we are still in the dark on the 27th of October, 2020, as to what the new curfew will be, if any, what stores or restaurants can open and who can offer services indoor and who must remain offering delivery or curbside services. We are heading into another opening of our border blindly at this point. And I don't care what any of you on the side opposite has to say. This is irresponsible governance. As always, Madam President, I want to thank all of the frontline workers and say to them, they are the real heroes in this fight. God bless them and keep them. I celebrate that to date, we have had over 4,000 recoveries, and that's something we do not talk about much. But thank you to our medical professionals for standing in the gap. To all families who've experienced loss during this time, especially to the family of the late, great Darrell Rowe, who served our country with distinction and leaves a stellar record behind and one that we can be proud of. I say my condolences to each and every one of you. Madam President, I join my parliamentary colleagues in opposing the continuation of this state of emergency. I urge this administration to find a different approach because the cost of failure is too high a price to pay. To the public, remember to continue practicing COVID safety protocols. Wash your hands, wear your mask, practice physical distancing, and continue to pray for our Bahama land. May God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Senator Jasmine Darius, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I am humbled today to rise in this honorable upper chamber to make contribution, and I acknowledge and give God thanks for His goodness and His grace and His mercy for keeping us this far. And I also say thank you to the Most Honorable Prime Minister for this appointment. Madam President, before I start my contribution, please allow me to say to the over 6,000 plus people who have tested positive for the coronavirus that my consistent prayers are with you. And for those that are sick and ill now, that I'm praying that you get well soon. For those that have recovered, I'm praying and wishing you that you stay safe during this time. I would also like to say to the families of the Bahamians who have died as a result of this virus, my deepest and sincere condolences to you, and may God help you to get through this terrible pandemic and this time of mourning. I also take this time to salute our health professionals, the nurses, doctors, the immigration, police officers, defense officers, the cashiers, and all that stand on the front line, in particular now our teachers, for your selfless act for love and service towards country. Madam President, we are in crisis times, and crisis times calls for the implementation of critical measures as we govern to protect our families, our businesses, communities, and in building a stronger Bahamas. We are in crisis times, uncharted territory, and a pivotal place in the history of this nation. The Bahamian people have entrusted the Menace administration with managing the affairs of this nation and safeguarding our future, a responsibility that we are honored to have, and our commitment to it remains unwavering. Bahamians can have confidence in this global pandemic that Prime Minister Menace, as a leader, has to make tough decisions. But as a medical doctor with specialized training and skill, yes, the competent authority, his decisions are geared towards saving lives and putting our economy on a more stable and prosperous footing. The emergency orders by our competent authority, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Menace, in the spirit of caution and for love of country, demonstrates Senator Jo Beth Colby Davis' strong and firm leadership in times of crisis. The orders are necessary to enforce the measures needed to protect and to safeguard us as a people. One of the roles of the government is to provide national security and safety for its citizenry. Even though these are strict measures, it shows that our government is a caring one, understanding that containment is not elimination. However, as the coronavirus is here, it remains a deadly threat to our lives and our livelihood. This threat, as we know, has exponentially increased by opening the borders. Let's be clear now. COVID-19 does not discriminate between PLP, FNM, DNA, black, white, young or old, male or female. Hence the reason we should lock shields and fight this together. One new case is a case too much. Bahamas, we are at war, and we must stand together as one to defeat the scourge. This is not the time to be rooting this is not the time to be rooting for the pride of your party or your political party team or playing political games, but rather in fighting for the good health, the wealth of this nation. The Bahamas is not the only country employing the lockdown strategy, which academic studies from Asia and Europe suggests that the lockdowns work. And in particular, and according to the Washington Post, October 22nd, 2020, these lockdowns are a preemptive strike against the virus, acting before it's too late. Other nations such as Ireland, China, South Korea, UK, France, Germany, India, and Spain have all imposed lockdowns and strict national restrictions. Please understand, Bahamas, no government take these steps lightly. Lockdowns are like a dirty word. Even with the advances in medical treatment to beat the virus, the only proven measure to stop the rampant spread of the coronavirus, even though proved, is to limit human interaction and movement. A Belgian virologist, Mr. Steven von Gott, said, and I quote, "If all other systems fail, a lockdown is the only thing left," end quote. In the 1918, during the Spanish flu pandemic, the second wave killed somewhere between 50 to 100 million persons. I say to you, Bahamas, we are a nation under 500,000 citizens. We just cannot afford a widespread outbreak of this coronavirus. Note the countries that failed to implement the lockdowns have experienced the highest death toll, like Sweden, America, and Russia. This is not the time, and I repeat, to be rooting for the pride of your political party team or to be playing politics, but rather it is the time for us to be fighting for the good health, the wealth, and the prosperity of this nation. For the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation. Madam President, these lockdowns are not about exercising power just to wield power or just to show power, but our Prime Minister. And I'm so thankful that God had ordained a medical doctor to be Prime Minister during this time, who understands more than most how vital it is to secure the health and well-being of our people. The lockdowns are not just to restrict human behavior and movement, but to save lives. And I also say to Dr. Darwell, the Ministry of Health provides regular updates. Every day, there are statistics that are printed for transparency and accountability in managing this crisis. I say again, the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation, and it is not the time for you to be rooting for your party team or your party team pride or playing games, political rhetoric. This is the time for us to band together and fight as one for this nation. Madam President, may we be reminded, a moment of pleasure is not worth catching a deadly virus, and the side opposite should agree with that. I wonder if their plan came after or before the leader caught the virus. So let us exercise discipline and wisdom to stay at home, to wash our hands, to sanitize. Let's protect the elderly, the immunocompromised, and our children who cannot protect themselves. Let us all be disciplined and responsible to ensure the preservation of this great nation. Madam President, we agree that the economy needs to open up. Please allow the leaders to provide the strategy and the balanced plan to advance and revive our economy. Madam President, I cry shame on the opposition. I cry shame on the leader of the opposition. I cry shame on you for not supporting the measures to protect this great nation. Where's your heart? Where is your moral conviction? Where's your loyalty and your allegiance? Is it to a political party, your political aspiration, or to the preservation and the protection of this great country? Let us not play politics to the detriment of human suffering. Our sons are dying. People are dying. Our daughters are dying. The soul of the nation, souls are in the balance at this time. So we are in a crisis. We are in a time of crisis, and it calls for maturity. It calls for responsibility, and it calls for national unity. How dare you play political football and childish games at a time like this, and to try and crucify the man who was set up at this time to lead us during this scourge. This is not the time to be rooting for the pride, I say again, of a political team or to be playing political football, but rather this is the time for us to band as one people and as one Bahamas for one single cause, and that is to ensure the good health and the wealth, the prosperity of this nation. In the words of my Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, fighting COVID-19 is a national effort. We have to work together. Each Bahamian and resident is key to our success. I support the extension of the emergency orders. May the Lord bring an end to the scourge and the plague of the coronavirus, and may He continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
In this age of hypersensitivity, it's a point of order. I'm going to make this hypersensitive comment since everybody's hypersensitive. What is the fact that Mr. Davis got the virus got to do with whether the PLP had a plan or not? I mean, come on. That doesn't belong in here. Madam, I'm sorry, before you begin. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, if it's inappropriate.
Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, fellow senators. It is indeed a pleasure to be able to stand here today. I don't need to speak and address about the emergency proclamation. I stand here today as a worker, because all of us in here are workers, and as I represent workers. And I think the primary thing for me today is I stand here and listening to all of my colleagues or senators speak. The important thing is the health and safety of our nation. To me, that is what is critical. And when we look at the high numbers that we've been seeing, and we look at the medical facts as to why those numbers are so high in the second surge, I think it is critical for us to understand that it is time for all of us to be on the same page. This is not a day to be divided. This is not a day for us to be disunited. This is a day for all of us to stand together, because the health of our country and the health of our citizens is what is paramount to me, to all of us, I would assume. And that should be what our focus should be as we sit at this table today. Whether it's Dr. Minnis making the decisions, whether it was Mr. Davis making the decisions, it really doesn't matter. The fact is, we must save our country. That is what this debate should be about. That is what COVID-19 is about, and us getting over this second surge. The most important thing for me, and I've heard so many people that I know who've had COVID, who've had to be airlifted to go to the US for medical treatment because of some issues. We have to understand, and I want to say to the public, the gravity and the extent of COVID-19 and the havoc that it is raging on the citizens of our country. And so we must all stand together and unite and do our part. Whether we do it together or whether we do it as the PLP, whether we do it as the FNM, whether we do it as the DNA, whether we do it as independent persons, whether we do it as civil society, whether we do it as a union. The fact is, we must get it done and we must work together. The competent authority has already said that he functions on the advice of the medical officials, and he also consults with his cabinet colleagues. And as far as I know, cabinet meetings have not been discontinued. They have continued. So I think that that is important. But I think the competent authority also wants to see the numbers go down, that he also wants to ensure that the citizens of this country are healthy and that we're able to rebound and open up our economy. We all know how important that is to all of us and to our very survival. So I just wish to say this morning, as I stand to my feet for these few brief moments, that we must unite together in love and service, as we always say. Irrespective of our political divide, our personal differences, our cultural differences, whatever perceived differences we have, that we as a people understand the gravity of COVID-19 today. And I want to all those who are hearing me within the sound of my voice to please, in order for us to do this, we must all work together. And it means that we must all do our part. Everybody, from the child to the adults, to the parents, to the teachers, everyone has to do their part in protecting not only themselves, but in protecting everyone that they come in contact with. When we come in contact with someone, we must treat them as if they have COVID-19. It's simple as that. We cannot anymore take things for granted that we can talk to one another unless we all live in the same house, that we can just go out into the supermarket and congregate and speak to each other without staying 6 feet, or that we don't need to wear a mask, or that we don't need to wash our hands and sanitize. Those three very basic things is the foundation on which our fight is built. And we must understand that and practice these things. So I just want to say to all that's within the sound of my voice that let us unite. Let us come together. Let us put our country first. If we care about our country, let's put that first. Because if we don't, we will not have a country to live in. It's simple as that. So let us take off whatever hats we have on And let us all put our hands and feet and let's turn the wheels and ensure that we decrease the numbers and get the numbers down to where we can live with it and that our healthcare system can live with it. So, Madam President, I stand today to support the resolution. And I say again to each and every citizen in this country, let us fight this virus together because we are all in this together. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President. Yes, sir. Yeah. I rise that to move a motion that the business of the Senate be extended beyond the 1 o'clock hour. Do I have a second?
A second. It's been moved and seconded that the business of the
Your podium, going please. Good afternoon. We're taking these off, yeah? Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. There is a criticism which the Progressive Liberal Party often uses in the public domain about a double standard which is employed when it comes to what we say and what the other side says. And I just listened to the freedom that the side opposite had to say whatever they wanted to say. As a matter of fact, in another disposition, I wouldn't say a word because it's a debate. And you say whatever you want to say. This is supposed to be the freest chamber. But this propensity to pop up every 5 seconds, point of order this, point of order that, on things and matters that can be settled in debate, seems to me a device which ought to be deployed. And it's just unfortunate it's gotten there, particularly since, as I said, we appear to have become such a humorless generation. Jerome Fitzgerald, when he was the Minister of Education, and I used to talk about this all the time, that we're just so literal with everything that people have forgotten figures of speech, analogies, convenient shorthands, and the humor which sometimes goes with making a point. So when I say the devil quotes scripture, it's not a personal thing at the senator. Never. It's not personal. It's making a point by using a figure of speech. So it's just unfortunate in what is supposed to be the freest forum in the country. My friend, Senator Dwight Sawyer, and I say that advisedly, I'm glad that you've had this opportunity to be sworn into the cabinet. And we were trying, as we look through the history of these kinds of appointments, to see when something like this had been done before. And I don't think anything has quite been done like this before. There have been, by our checking, 3 ministers without portfolio in the history, the living memory that we can think of. And that's why I was seeking the clarification on whether this was actually a substantive appointment or a minister without portfolio. And that was when Sir Lyndon Pindling took office. Sir Clement Maynard was the leader of government business in the House and was a minister without portfolio, I believe. Doris Johnson, when she was appointed in 1968, yes, that's right, was a minister without portfolio. In 1968, Dr. Doris Johnson, or the Dame Doris Johnson, was a minister without portfolio and later became Minister of Transport. And then Clarence Bain, who served as minister without portfolio until his passing in 1971. So you're not that category, you're the substantive minister of state. And just an interesting constitutional exercise which excited the population And the older you get, more people run to you. How can they do this? How can they do this? And it's just interesting to unfold. We can't support this resolution, though, notwithstanding best personal wishes, and we will be asking for a recorded vote at the end of these proceedings. It's very interesting to me, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who led the debate in the other place yesterday, began with this logic that wintertime is coming, and as wintertime comes, people, and the weather gets cooler, people concentrate more inside, and therefore the virus will spread during the winter. So immediately around the social media community, people said, well, okay, if that's your rationale, then why are you arguing for a lockdown? Because a lockdown is locking people inside. So if being inside spreads the virus, what's the rationale for the lockdown? Just saying. Yesterday also, the other place had a recorded vote. Much was made of this. So-and-so voted yes, this was voted no, other people abstained, so on and so forth. Now, the point I wish to make to those who support us, those who oppose us, is this. The rules now have and imposed a curfew at 7 p.m. Despite what was argued in this place by the learned Attorney General, there is nothing in these rules which protects members of Parliament or senators from being out beyond 7 p.m. The fact that you have a good face and the police officers will give you a pass does not, as far as we know, exempt you. And there's a presumption of regularity in law. The point was made by the leader of the opposition is this. The debate was supposed to have stopped at a particular time. It did not. It went beyond the time allotted. And as the 7 o'clock hour approached, the point was made, we have to be out of here by 7 p.m. And I intend to be a law-abiding citizen because we are not exempted. And that is why members of Parliament from the Progressive Liberal Party side were not there when the vote took place at 7:29 p.m. after the curfew. After the curfew. Now, I just want to make that point. I hear what you say. I hear what you say. But I'm saying there's nothing in the law which exempts members of Parliament. I made this point to the Attorney General before. It's not in writing. And it's no good for you to show up and say to the police, oh, I'm a member of Parliament. You know, it's the equivalent of the old days of saying, don't you know who I am? That'll get you in a lot of trouble, you know. Nobody wants to pull that. So we're trying to conform with the law. 7 p.m. is the curfew, and every member of the Progressive Liberal Party wants to conform with that law. Okay. What also interests me is that the propensity for our political opponents to engage and be masters of what I call distraction. One of the distractions that I found, Madam President, was this whole argument today about the competent authority and whether the competent authority is the Prime Minister alone or whether he takes advice. Sophistry. Sophistry. Just distracting from what is the real issue at hand. The Senator Darville talked about the fact that the airport was closed in Grand Bahama. No announcement made, it was closed, no, nothing, you know. American Airlines crashes on the runway. Western Airlines has to shut down its operations, I think 3 days running. And we finally got out of there yesterday. Now, the Minister of Tourism, who's responsible for making sure aviation safety, all those things, because we got the backstory. The backstory, Madam President, was that civil aviation, who's responsible for investigations, for some reason, they said the weather. It was bad weather in the province, so they couldn't make it up to Grand Bahama in order to tell them, you can move the aircraft or you can open the runway. So we had to cool our heels there for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday until they got around to getting up to Grand Bahama, which is just 30 minutes down the road from Nassau. And, you know, we've been doing Zoom and webinar And there's the telephone, and there's the television, and there's Skype, and this one and that one, and and then they were only using half of the runway anyway when we took off yesterday. And I said, well, they could have done that Saturday, use half the runway. Western Air, their folks had to go home 3 days in a row. But when the public criticism was made, first thing one of our political opponents said on social media, oh, Fred Mitchell only mad because he can't go back home. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would be mad because I can't go back home, But that's the rationale. That's the rationale for the airport not being open. I mean, just silly distractions, Then the Minister of Tourism says, well, I heard what the PLP is saying. And, I don't interfere with decisions in what happens at the airport. But what he's really doing is he's attacking the public servants, because they're the ones who make the decisions. Does that sound familiar? Argument made here today, So he said, he said he promised that he was going to tell the public servants what I say, that we're attacking them, right? No, that ain't got nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. We were talking about the minister's responsibility to open the airport. You talk about Fred Mitchell attack the public servants. Very good, though. Next one is Water and Sewage Corporation doesn't pay the water bill in Eleuthera, so the people cut the water off. Now, if you're a woman in Baytown, and you will pay your water bill, the man just announced to the newspapers, the chairman of the corporation just announced with big fanfare to the newspaper, he's going to the cabinet to get permission to turn off the water of people who don't pay their bills, right? So the Water and Sewage Corporation doesn't pay its bill. The people turn off the water. He goes to court, gets an injunction, say, this is heartless and this and that, and so forth. Distraction from the real issue, and then both the minister and the corporation says, it's that bad PLP. They signed all those contracts before 2017. So that's why, so, yeah, that's a fact. I agree with you. That's a fact. So, the water is off because, not because they didn't pay the bill, that's not why the water is off. Yeah, you all are good. Good. The only question, as I said to the leader of the opposition when we were speaking about this, did the Water and Sewage Corporation pay the bill? That's the only thing. And if you didn't pay the bill, the man is entitled to cut the water off. And so we move now to this resolution and the various orders thereunder. And one of the reasons I am particularly exercised about it, Madam President, is this. There's a man who's a restaurateur at Arawak. And a restaurant across the street was able to operate fully. No problems about going inside, getting your service, no thing about curbside service, not like that. But Arawak, for some reason, you could only have curbside service. This is, as far as I could see, an act of discrimination, which is not reasonably justified under Article 29, 2 or 4 of the Constitution, which says you can suspend the civil liberties, you can do all of these things, but it must be reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. So he does what? He appeals to the competent authority, the Prime Minister. Prime Minister says, I'm not changing. I'm not doing anything. He goes to the press, has a press conference. They all gather. They gather at Arawak, they gather at Potter's Key. The competent authority is unmoved. So what's left? Public demonstrations. We'll come to a public demonstration in a minute. So ultimately, remedies exhausted, so he decides to go to the court. Files an action, I believe, something like 14th or so of August, and could not get a hearing for 2 months. 2 months. Maybe just a few days shy. And then, when there is a hearing, he can't get a decision for 2 weeks. Simple ex parte application is either yes or no. You either made out a case or you haven't. And that's the story all around. But I was interested to find out that the Water and Sewerage Corporation could go and file an action, and bingo, they're right before the courts, and injunction granted. Interesting. People are watching. I had an interesting experience, Madam President, with Kai Mills, who is an activist up in Abaco. Everybody knows Kai. Everybody knows Kai. So he gets locked up in Abaco and about to be he's charged with 3 offenses, the usual troika of, resisting arrest, disorderly behavior. And then the question is, can he get bail? No, he can't get bail. So he's got to go to Nassau. So his lawyers are able to get a hold of, get access to the courts here in Nassau before a Supreme Court justice. The justice grants bail. Says he ought to be released. As a matter of fact, he ought to be released on his own recognizance until the sureties can be signed on the Monday. Police refuse to grant him bail, to allow him to leave. They want to see not the judge's notes. They want to see this. It took a call to the Attorney General, to the Commissioner of Police, back and forth, back and forth. Ultimately, he was released at 8 p.m. If he did not have the lawyers, he would have been in the caboose today for 3 simple charges, which he should have been released on bail. And I mentioned Mr. Mills because, of course, he is well known, but there are other less well-known cases where people end up not getting bail for various offenses under these orders, and they don't have access to the lawyers. I see people pleading guilty to things which they're obviously, when you read the explanations they give the magistrates to, they are obviously not guilty, and there's not sufficient in the civil society. The human rights activists who are so active trying to destroy the Progressive Liberal Party are silent as lambs today, not doing a single thing, as these civil liberties are suspended all around. One of the men who led a demonstration for the workers at Atlantis. I went out, the leader of the opposition asked me, because I'm the shadow minister for labor, to go and see how it went. So we go there, and when we arrived, these people planned to march across the bridge. They were blocked by the police. They couldn't go across the bridge. So they congregated on the park on the Eastern Parade. So I called the Attorney General and said, "What are you all doing?" He explains to me what their position is on the law. But I recall that on 2 occasions, the Free National Movement itself led demonstrations over that bridge. One case, they blocked the bridge. Yeah, so is it so or is it not so? And that's the irony of the situation. The easier thing to do, Madam President, in the circumstances is let the people walk over the bridge. Make sure that there'd be no damage to property, and the march would have dissipated. Instead, they bottle these people. Yeah, well, fine, that's fine. I hear what you say. We're talking about civil liberties. So it ends up that they walk. Well, they're still permitted to walk. Still permitted to walk on the streets. You haven't taken that away, though. Eh? So after they go down to right here, and they end up here, women. Women are the activists in the country. We had a male leader that day. He's a well-known person as well, and he had a bullhorn. And with his bullhorn, we were upstairs, so we opened the window and we hear, "Minutes got to go, minutes got to go, minutes got to go, minutes got to go." Next thing we know, he's put in the caboose and charged with causing a riot or inciting a riot.
One of the information, Madam President.
You're asking me to yield.
Yes. Just for clarity, Madam President, the incident that Senator Mitchell speaks of, I recall it was carried on the news and also on the live stream. On the live stream, where the senior officer approached the gentleman that Senator Mitchell speaks of and advised him that they did not have the permission to hold a march, and as long as they stay on the public path, they will permit it. But to march over the bridge was a no, or to be on public road was a no. So again, I just want to bring it to attention that the organizers of that particular march did not have the authority or the permission to hold a setting such as such.
Thank you for that clarity, but permission is something you could give with the stroke of a pen. And my point I was making is you could get permission with the stroke of a pen. You can get permission with the stroke of a pen. With the stroke of a pen. With a stroke of a pen, you can get permission. You can't argue with that. With the stroke of a pen. Okay. Stroke of a pen. Stroke of a pen. With the stroke of a pen, you can get permission. Reasons why the horse is dead, the cow is fat. I understand all of that, but you can get permission with the stroke of a pen. So, and then there's this video that was out on the weekend with some police officers in some people's yards doling out tickets because they had a social gathering. Now, again, the rules are the rules, but I'll bet, and this is the issue which we join issue with the government. When Senator Jo Beth Colby talked about public education, you have not given public education a proper try. Because here's the issue. This is a disease, the perception for which, and I heard other senators say it affects younger people, and I agree, young people have died, but in the main, younger people believe they are not affected by this disease. And I had to explain to someone who's my age, I said, who was castigating these young people. I say, look, when you were 18, you figure anybody could have told you anything about staying home and lock up in your place? Which universe are you living in? It ain't gonna happen. I mean, it just isn't gonna happen, And so what you have to do is you have to keep drumming in the message. We were talking about masks. I said long ago, police officers should have masks in their cars and give them out. Give them out free of charge. Just give them out. Wear your mask. Wear your mask. Right? So public education, that's what we said, public education, in addition to testing, tracing, and all the rest of it. But that happened. And then, Madam President, talking about the arbitrariness of the decisions. There doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason. I heard on the FNM side, John Lee Ferguson's widow complaining about not being able to have a church service for her husband for the funeral. The family of Honorable Darrell Rowe is really exercised about the fact that they're unable to have a funeral for their family. But there are examples, I'm advised, I think once there was a police officer where full-throated funeral. And so people say, what's going on here? It seems capricious, it seems whimsical, it seems arbitrary. And there's no redress. I already said how the courts are not readily available to settle these things when they should be. In Eleuthera, Madam President, there was a case where my colleague Senator Sweeting, who can't be here again for various reasons connected with transportation to come here, but was able to call me because there was a service in Eleuthera. Church service, the Anglican Church. Service going on. The police actually interrupted the service and told the priest, you're in violation of the law. The service must stop. Everybody get out of the church. Now, there's an offense in the Bahamas called disturbing divine worship. That's an offense, which you get, so police officers may have been guilty of that. Now, in a way, you say, touch not the Lord's anointed, but, the church should simply stand up to that. You're coming in here telling me what I must do. The only person I heard say fight back on that was Reverend Morrison over here at Zion. and I guess they must have left him alone. But what I'm saying is that is the difficulty with this with this extension is the suspension of civil liberties. The suspension of civil liberties. And the leader of the opposition, when he spoke yesterday in the House, made a very telling point. The deaths back in 1st July were what? One number, exponentially larger by this day or yesterday when he spoke. Same thing with infections. One number, exponentially larger. Lockdowns, shutdowns, this, the next, tickets, so on and so forth. It hasn't worked. So you ask yourself, if you keep doing the same thing, it isn't working, why you keep doing it? Well, it isn't. It isn't. The evidence is there. It isn't working. That's the issue. That's the issue. You want to say QED. Yeah. My friend Courtney Strong. Yeah. Lunch Bunch. St. Agnes member. Kiwania. Former chair of the Antiquities Museum Commission. 66 years of age. Passed away. And there is a swath which is being cut through the whole country of middle-aged men and women who are dying from this disease. Just past the retirement age, The retirement age will soon have to be up to 67 in any event if national insurance is to be saved. But 65, he's 66. But the broader point I was making is that the effect of this, if it continues, and we're unable to get on top of it, is that the knowledge base, the sense of institutional integrity, national integrity is being lost by the loss of these people in these age groups. When I visit the University of the Bahamas and talk to the youngsters, what always strikes me as fascinating, they always say, young people, they're different from the other generations. They don't, you can't tell them what to do. But when I talk to many of them, it always fascinates me that they always begin what they say. My Grammy said. My Grammy said this. My Grammy said that. Right. I mean, that is that body of people, the 50, 60, 70, influential. I'm sorry? No, they now say, I think you're now a senior, considered a senior when you pass 50, right? Yeah. Right. So what I'm saying is that there's a knowledge, an institutional base which is being lost. We're in danger of being lost. So another reason we want to keep the stability of the society in check by seeing if we can avoid these deaths, if we can avoid the deaths. And I hear the bit about, we always have this argument with the other side, at least me, this question about politics, and we must take politics out of it, so on and so forth. We're not arguing political, we're arguing policy. That's what we're arguing. And you're not arguing my patriotism because I speak in the Senate because I disagree with your policy or I disagree with your party. We're not fighting over that. And I said it before, so don't put that one on me. Because when I see something, it's my duty to respond to it. That's why we're here. That's what this place is for, the High Court of Parliament. And the point is, the government, when it employed the strategy at the start, said that they would use the opportunity of the lockdowns to ramp up the facilities to make sure there's adequate healthcare facilities. Well, again, the evidence is that has not happened. It's not the case. So you have now your former Minister of Health, Dr. Sands, saying, look, what the PLP said at the start, although you can give us the credit for it, at the start, you need a field hospital to deal with COVID cases, because what is happening is people, at least the anecdotal reports are, people are presenting themselves in the hospital as non-COVID cases, not being able to get the care, and then expiring. or becoming more seriously ill. And, we keep watching what's happening in the United States. So that's why we keep asking about what is the plan? What is the plan? Not patting yourselves on the back saying, pull out a club. What a good boy am I. We're doing such a great job. The people who are running against the incumbent in the United States, as we understand it, their policy is possibly a shutdown of the U.S. borders and economy. Same lockdown strategy. So, is the Bahamas anticipating that? What do we do in those circumstances? We had this before during the 2001 emergency, where the borders of the United States were shut for 2 weeks. And within 2 weeks, the warehouses in the Bahamas started running out of food. So 3rd of November is a week away. If there's a new man in town, a new sheriff in town come the 20th of January, what is the Bahamas' possible response going to be to it? And I do wish you've taken on board the point that Senator Darville employed or asked the question about these tests, because the evidence which has been presented to us is, let's put it at this level, is worrying about these tests. And also, I read a piece in the press this morning that some subgroup of this organization for Responsible Governance, somehow is the vendor who is supplying the tests. Now, that seemed a bit odd, $3 million. I mean, can you explain how that came about, the connection? We asked whether or not there was a bid. How did they come to be associated with it? Because from our point of view, we knew Organization for Responsible Governance to be one of these front organizations that assaulted the Progressive Liberal Party on a political level before the last general election. So what is their connection with COVID testing? How does that get to be? That, in summary,
Pardon me. I believe that you're referring to the wrong organization. I believe that it was, pardon me, point of order, Madam President. I think you said the chair recognizes, pardon me. I believe it was something like, and I can't put my finger immediately to it, but the Organization for Responsible COVID Management or something like that. It was something I had not heard before, but it wasn't responsible governance.
well, the Nassau Guardian reported.
Oh, I don't
The
know.
Nassau Guardian reported that there was, in fact, this organization that you talked about, and they gave an acronym, but it said that it was a sub-organization of the Organization for Responsible Governance. That's what I read. So since that is in the public domain, I was asking the government if they could tell us how that came about, if it is so, and what is the connection. So that is our position, Madam President. As I said, we'll be asking for a recorded vote. I thank my colleagues for outlining succinctly the case for the opposition, and I thank you for allowing this intervention.
Madam President, I didn't want to interrupt the senator while he was at flight, but I just want to bring to the House attention that while the senator said that the cases are going up, actually the cases are going down, according to the most recent Ministry of Health daily reports since the weekend lockdown. So I just want to make sure that the people know that the numbers are going down and not going up as stated by the other side.
I believe, Madam President, there is an expression which the young people use, which is called trending.
Good afternoon again. Madam President, fellow senators, as I wrap up this debate, I just want to make one or two comments before we go to a vote, or before we commit this resolution to a vote. And the first one in response to Senator Dowell's comment when he gave his contribution at the beginning of his contribution, we didn't know what happened in Freeport with reference to the closing of the airport over the weekend. You know, the good thing about being a minister, even though the good thing about being a minister is that within your ministry you have company staff. Yeah. When if there's some things that you don't know, your company staff will get up and bring up the day quickly. and bring up the day quickly. So they give me a response, okay? And I must commend them for the quickness they gave me the response, okay? They gotta bring me up to date because I've only been in this office for 36 hours. So it's impossible for me to be up to date with everything. But in response to you, Senator Dowell, right? I don't want to say, right? And I want this to be recorded, okay? On Saturday, the 24th of October, around 12 noon, it was reported that, let me take this off, please. It was reported that American Airlines flight 4194 from Miami skidded off the runway at Grand Bahama Airport. 25 persons, I've got a 25, okay? 25 persons were on flight, and we are thankful that there were no serious injuries. Teams had come in from New Providence and the US, to commence the investigation before the plane could be moved. This was hampered by bad weather on Sunday, the 25th. I understand there was tremendous bad weather there. We had some in Nassau. These decisions are not made by the politicians, but very specific international rules which the professionals are bound to follow. The airport resumed commercial flights yesterday, Monday, the 26th. Senator Dowell is well aware that Atchison and the government are negotiating for the purchase of the Grand Bahama Airport. This will be completed shortly. Atchison is constructing another temporary facility, which will also be completed shortly. The government will do what the PLP failed to do. This government will make the difficult decision that in the midst of Hurricane Dorian and a pandemic, we will still act. Some are talkers and others are doers. We will take the courageous step to purchase the airport and restore the airport. So I'd like to commend my staff for that quick response for that, okay?
Madam President, if I may.
You want me to sit down?
Yes, please. Thank you
On
so
a point
much.
of order.
Thank you on a point of order, Minister. And thank you for that quick response. I expected, I wanted to maintain your legacy without getting involved because it's important for it to go down in history that it appeared that you have done a better job than the current or the former minister for Grand Bahama. But I beg to differ. After 1 year, after Hurricane Dorian, the government, the Grand Bahama Port Authority and Hutchison Port is not doing a great job. As a matter of fact, their lack of response is disgraceful. And the residents of Grand Bahama have been placed in harm's way. Have you ever driven on the taxiway that moves Western Air to their facility? It's an absolute disgrace. And the government, you minister, as well as Hutchison Port and the Grand Bahama Port Authority should hold their heads in shame. And to be able to stand to your feet to defend a position that is undefendable for the last 1 year is an absolute disgrace. And instead of patting yourself on the back, an apology should be made to the residents of Grand Bahama. Thank you.
I just also want to make a point of order. And this answer, Madam President, yeah, answer demonstrates the point I was making. the statement, fine, it's the minister's statement, but the professionals, the minister said it was an answer by the professionals. Why would professionals, after delineating what actually happened, the facts, then go on to say Dr. Dava would be well aware and all of the other political stuff? Surely the professionals that must be the ministerial responsibility, not the professionals. The professionals will tell you the plane crashed, it was this time, we went in, so on and so forth. Not the stuff about, you see what I'm saying? So that's why we take issue with the statements.
So your disagreement is that the politicians should have repeated what the professionals said?
Well,
Is that what you're
if
saying?
you are reporting what the professionals said, then you report what the professionals said. Now, the minister may go on and say, but Dr. Darville knows better and so on and so forth. But what is being said is it's the professional statement. And I'm certain the public servants wouldn't have written that.
Madam President, point of order. I just want to respond to, thank you, Madam President. Just want to respond to former Minister Darville, Senator Darville, that him being a former minister, especially of Bahama, he knows that the taxiway and the airport is under private control. He knows that it's under private control, and his statement is misguided and misdirected. I just want the House, the Senate to know that.
Say that Hutchison owns the airport, they would fix it, and it's a disgrace. So how's that misguided?
Hey, your comments the most noted, Senator. Let me continue my wrap up. With reference to the emergency order that we are about to pass in a few minutes, right? Let me just say that we take this thing very seriously. We are in the business about saving lives, and that is our mission. Okay, that is our mission. That we are here today to save lives. As this enemy that we're dealing with, please, can I have your attention, please? This enemy that we are dealing with is an invisible enemy. We cannot see it. As far as I'm concerned, and as far as I know, there is no cure for it immediately. A vaccine probably wouldn't be out until another year or so, even though they're now testing in the United States. There are some individuals, some scientists in the States who advocate another area that they should go, all right? And that's what's called herd immunity, which means that everybody go for a free fall until they build up an immunity to it. But in that instance, you'll have a lot of people dying from it, okay? But we don't want that, and we don't even advocate that. And so the only other way known to us is to practice the protocol that has been established worldwide, and that's what we are doing. All right? We have to continue doing social distancing. We have to continue wearing our masks, continue doing sanitizing, and most of all, stay home when you have no need to be out on the outside. At this stage, right, we should be talking about unity. Because we only have one enemy here. We only have one enemy in this. And this enemy is the COVID-19. Okay? And we have to unite. All right? And then, and my final comment before we think is that, and I know a lot been said earlier, and I just want to emphasize again, when the PM makes his decisions, he makes his decisions on the advice of medical professions and with the cabinet approval and their input. And this is a fact, and this is indisputable fact. And that is the point. He doesn't make his decisions alone. Okay, so I really want to dispel that rumor, or that notion, all right, that he's a one-man ruler, which is not the case. Okay, and we should at the same time put emphasis on a balance between the health and the safety of our citizens of the Bahamas and residents, and also the economy of the Bahamas. And Madam President, on that note, I now commit. Is that what you said? Is now commit this resolution for a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam.
Yes, Senator Mitchell.
Yes, we are asking for a recorded vote, please.
I guess that would be the clerk's responsibility. Okay. It has been moved and seconded. The resolution states, whereas pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that a state of public emergency for the purposes of that article exist in the Bahamas. And whereas it continues to be necessary and expedient for securing the public safety, the defense of the Bahamas, the maintenance of public order, the suppression of mutiny, rebellion, and riot, and for maintaining supplies and services essential to the life and well-being of the community to continue in force. The second proclamation, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020, the Emergency Powers 19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020, and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Extension of Section 17.1 of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020. Now therefore be it resolved that these chambers approve the continuance of the second proclamation made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020 made on the 9th day of October 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020 made on the 30th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020, and affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Extension of Section 17.1 of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020 made on the 31st day of August 2020 until the 30th day of November. This resolution having been moved, seconded, and debated, we now call for a vote. All those in favor? Okay.
Aye, in favor.
Nay.
Aye. Nay. Absent. Absent. Absent.
Yes. Yay.
Aye.
Nay. Aye. Voted on by a voice call. The results are yes, 5, nay, 3. The resolution passes. 7 absent. Okay, we'll just continue. Discharge of select committees, notices for future meetings.
I'd like to renew all the notices on the agenda in the name of the government.
And I would
Senator
like
Mitchell.
to renew all the notices in the name of the opposition.
Thank you. Orders for clerk. Before I call for the adjournment, I would like to share with the members here, the family, and the general public that one of our very esteemed physicians in our community lost his mother, Dr. Charles Digges, this past week, and we send sincere condolences to him and all of his family and the extended community. Thank you. Adjournment.
I move that the business of the Senate be adjourned sine die. Do I have a second?
The Senate on its rising, the motion has been moved that we be adjourned sine die. All those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it. The Senate is adjourned.